Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the Groton Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting on April 15th, 2024 at 6:05. We are located in the central office, room 11, and we're both in person and online. Present at the meeting is Adrian Johnson, Ian Thomas, Dean Antipas, myself, Bev Washington, Andrea Ackerman,
Matt Shulman. Phil Piazza.
Denise Doolittle.
excuse me?
Lauren Cassini.
Okay, nice to meet you, Lauren.
Ben Mood.
Nice to meet you, Ben. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending. The first order of business is review the minutes of March 18th, 2024. Did everyone receive the minutes and have a chance to look over them? Okay. Do you have a motion to accept the minutes? Do you have a second? Moved by Dr. Ackerman. Do you have a second? Second by Board Member Shulman. Any discussion about the minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So approved. Thank you. The next order is discussion of the state testing and state report card, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
So I'm going to turn it over to Denise Doolittle and Lauren Cassini and Dr. Phil Piazza. They've really been overseeing the state testing, and we'll start with that and the procedures that we're going through now that we're kind of knee-deep in the process.
And I'm just, I'm signing on. Mark, is the link you sent me, is that going to allow me to share my screen?
Once you join, I'll have to promote you to a panelist.
All right, I just joined. Join as a panelist. Thank you.
While he's doing that, I'll show you that today is Purple Up Day. I think you probably got a few messages. And so we're supporting our military kids, and this whole month is really the celebration of our military children. And we have over 1,000 children, so we're very proud to serve those who serve.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, we want to give you a brief overview of the state testing. We have just started the window of administration of several versions of the state test. And you see, this is taken from the training webinar that Phil, Lauren, and I attended through the State Department of Education. We then came back and trained our administrators and teacher leaders. We have a test coordinator in every building, and some buildings have more than one. It's usually an assistant principal and one of the interventionists, and they support the building in administration of the various tests we're going to highlight for you this evening. The first one is the Smarter Balance Assessment. We call it SBAC for short. And that is a test basically of reading and math that's administered to students in grades 3 through 8. Next is the Next Generation Science Standards. That's administered to students in grades 5, 8, and 11. And then the Connecticut Alternate Assessment System is for students who have significant disabilities and require an alternate assessment to the two assessments I just shared with you. And then lastly, we have the Scholastic Aptitude Test that is administered to juniors. And the alternate assessment is available for students in grades 3 through 8 and 11. There's one version for ELA, English Language Arts and Math, and then there's an alternate science assessment. So we're going to share a little bit more about these assessments with you this evening. So this is our 2024 testing calendar. These are the dates of the testing window. In other words, these are the dates that the state makes the tests available. And I should note that almost every test you can see on the far right-hand column are administered online. We're going to talk to you a little bit in a moment about that online platform because it's come a long way in the past few years in terms of using what's called universal design, meaning there are a lot of accommodations embedded in the platform to make the testing a better experience for our students, and so that they can really show their best work through this online platform. So we start with, you can see the Connecticut Alternate English Language Proficiency is a fairly new test. Last year it was field tested. This year it's live. This is for students who qualify for the alternate assessment, but who are also proficient in a language other than English. And that is available for students in grades K through 12. It assesses annually their proficiency in English and whether they continue to require services from our ELL staff.
Do we have a lot of students that fall into that category?
We have a lot of ELL students. I believe the term is multi-language learners or multilingual learners. But one of the points I wanted to share with you in terms of the alternate assessment is it's recommended that only 1% of the population tested participate in the alternate assessment. The point is that it's a very small group of students who really cannot take the standard test even with the full complement of accommodations that are built in.
And it is by design authorized through the IEP process, PPT.
Correct.
So the parent placement
Correct.
team decides.
That's correct. Next, you see, again, the Smarter Balance, which is a test primarily of English language arts, and math. And you can see that the window, it opened March 25th. Our buildings are starting, we typically start after April break. So we give the students a week to come back from April break and transition back to school, and then we generally start the last week of April or the first week of May.
Is there a reason behind that?
Just the longer we give the students, to benefit from instruction and test them closer to the end of the test window, we find that, they have the benefit of more instruction before being assessed.
Makes
And they
sense.
kind of come back refreshed after spring break, and then we get them back in the saddle to get ready.
Quick question, do the students have an option to take it with pen and paper other than online?
Nope.
No,
They're
okay.
all online.
Okay.
Yep. And then, again, we have the alternate assessment. Now, I should note that the alternate assessment is administered individually with a student and a special education teacher. So that does take a little bit longer, and we did start administering that at the beginning of April, end of March, for that reason. The NGSS is your science assessment. Again, the 11th graders opened a little bit early in February, and they have already administered the NGSS to their students. I'll jump down to SAT Day. That was April 3rd. So SAT has already been administered at the high school, in addition to PSAT. But then going back to the Connecticut alternate science assessment, that is the one assessment that's paper pencil. It's really a performance task. The teachers observe the students completing a series of tasks, and they score them based on a rubric, and then they upload those scores to the test portal. And then lastly is Connecticut SAT Day, which we just addressed briefly.
Any questions on this page?
Yeah, excuse me. When do the results come out, and how are do they go to anyone besides the district staff?
So the results come out early summer, and they're what's called embargoed. So they are only for district planning purposes when they first come out. And then there is a date that the state releases the scores to the public, and that we release the scores to the parents, because every student has a nice report that's generated from SBAC, from the Cambium, which is the company that runs the assessment, with their scores and a nice explanation of the test and what the test measures, and it has a nice graph that shows their scores and the different subtests.
All right, and then are there any other standardized tests? And what I'm seeing here is for all of the all of the kids except for the top category, the English learners, in K to 2. So are there any standardized tests that they'll be getting?
No, not that I can think of. In K to 2 specifically,
Yeah,
no.
We do have universal screeners, though.
Other than the dibbles,
Yeah.
yeah.
no. No.
Matt?
You said that the release of the SBAC was embargoed for administration use and then later released to the public. Would the board be considered administration for the purpose of your being able to share them with us?
No, because there's a validity process that they go through, so they don't really want it out until it's been really authorized as valid.
Typically, when is it released?
It's actually been much better than when they first started. Like, we're getting that data sometimes when kids are finishing the test. And then, so throughout the summer, we're able to really data mine and start kind of organizing ourselves for the school year. And usually this year, I think it was late August maybe that we were able to share with the board, or early September. So and get the test into the parents' hands too.
Okay, so we're basically
So
talking 30 to 45 days.
It used to come later in the fall, like we were waiting and waiting, but now we're getting it much sooner. Yeah.
You want to say something, Phil?
No, go ahead.
Dean?
This process of checking the validity of the results, what does that involve?
I don't know specifically, but we could find out. I mean, they've really never said what they do. They've just said they've got to just really check to make sure that, I guess they're looking also for their assessment, like if there's particular questions that none of the kids are getting, or all of the kids are getting, like they're really looking at it from the perspective of the fairness of the test, I guess.
So when we get the results, or anybody gets the results after they've been checked for validity, are there notes about how it is? Sorry, I'm not even on the mic. Are there notes about,
Pull it closer to you.
yeah. Following the check for validity, are there notes saying, well, we ran it through the process, and just so folks know, FYI, there was an issue that was common, that we filtered something out, and here's, without giving away individual scores or obviously identifying
Have you
anybody.
seen that, Lauren?
Yeah,
So you know why it was, I'm not going to use the word
yeah.
massaged,
In
but,
some cases,
yeah.
if there was really, a widespread item or so to say that, so to speak, that they saw was invalid for one reason or another, yeah, they typically will give us that information. And what we're going to show you later, you can actually find some of that information yourself on this, the report card that I'm going to show you later that we're going to look at. So you can actually go and look at some of those notes yourself if you have questions about it, and many times you can find information in there as well.
is the data ever normalized? Fit to a curve, for example, or anything like that at all?
No, it really isn't.
I don't think so, but I figured I'd ask. Okay.
But another piece to why it's not shared till later in the summer is also, there are those examples of assessments, pieces of assessment that are scored by individuals. So it's the whole, you get an overview of the results, but they're not complete until midsummer as well. Because there are some items that need to be scored manually in some cases, or by individuals. So there are a lot of different reasons why it's not released until
And we don't get all the data released. Like, you'll see it's a
Right.
whole journey throughout the year. Like, the report card we've been looking for it, and, so by the end of the school year, we're looking at the report card from last year's data. But I figured this would be a good opportunity to show last year's data, and so you could see the essence of this assessment
Right.
in its entirety. It's more holistic. Remind you of the yardstick. It's kind of like what the board had constructed years ago.
The Groton yardstick.
Groton yardstick. They were really ahead of their time. And back then, you were only getting scores. But now they really are caring about attendance and graduation rates and all those things. So it's very comprehensive. So I'm excited to share that with you. And then it'll kind of get you ready, so when that data comes in, we can show you as it starts to unfold the different pieces of data all the way through to the report card.
Yep.
Phil, did you?
No, I was just going to comment, Susan sort of hit on it, but normally, when it was paper pencil, we had to wait until
Wait
October, for a lot of the results. So at least this is definitely a quicker process, so we can start
Even the
building our
SAT.
goals around the data in the summertime, so it is much quicker.
This was
But
the
we'll-
first year all SAT was online.
Right.
So that should also give kids results much sooner.
Good point.
Adrian has one last question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So in regards to family involvement, when these grades come out, are they discussed, and are students that are below grade level identified? And is there a discussion with the family about that?
So the scores are on a rubric. It's 1 through 4. So it goes from below standard to exemplary.
Yeah.
And it's only one snapshot. So we do share the scores with the parents, and there's a nice letter that goes home from Phil, and we have contact information if parents have questions at the school level. And the report is very detailed, but it is just one piece of data, and it is used in terms of looking at students who might be struggling or who need intervention, but it is only one piece of data.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, for a child that is on the lowest level, is an IEP called or a PPT called at that point, if they're significantly below grade level?
We
Or if it's
wouldn't-
for more than a year, or how would that work?
Again, it's used at the intervention team. The buildings all have data teams. So their data teams come together and they review the data. And if there are outliers, they would certainly have a discussion about why potentially that student did poorly. Teachers are asked to keep notes, too, to see maybe a student rushed through the test and really didn't put the most effort in and, completed it very quickly. So we'll ask teachers to check their notes, try to have a discussion about, was this a valid score, or is this a score that is valid and that we need to provide intervention? And that's really the purpose of the data teams, in conjunction with the other data that they're gathering at the start of the school year.
All right. And then one other question, kind of going back to Dibbles, which we've talked about a little bit, and like families being given the scores. Do we have a hard policy on what that's going to be going forward?
I wouldn't say, there's not a policy at this point. They were instructed to review them at the conferences, the most recent
Teachers
conferences.
were.
The teachers were. So we need to develop that as, again, this is the first year we're doing that test, and we
Yeah.
need to discuss what we're going to do. I know the calendars are already being developed for the end-of-year assessments, and then what we're going to do with that data. So that's not set, it's definitely not set in a policy, but we can
Yeah, I guess.
discuss what the expectations are around that.
I guess as a board, I would love to discuss this a little more. Specifically, so I'd talked to a few parents that had gotten it. Some had gotten the results and it was discussed, and I saw the letter that you wrote and I thought it was very good, and some hadn't gotten the results in those. So I'm wondering if we do need something more of a policy so that parents, my concern is that a parent is not going to really take seriously that their child is behind in reading or math or reading, because we're talking about Dibbles, until second or third grade. So I feel that we as a district should give the parents as much information so they know where their kid is before they're later on and are far behind.
And,
And
we
I
have a,
think we did say if the parents, because there might be parents who didn't come to the conferences, typically in elementary, most of them do, but if, in that case, I think they were going to be sending them home.
I was just going to say, we do have a meeting tomorrow with elementary principals, so
Yeah,
I'll add that to
I'll
the
ask.
agenda about
Yeah.
the distribution of Dibbles data. Because I was going to say the same thing. I know they were given to parents who showed up, but if they weren't at conferences, we'll follow up to see.
I think
what's-
some, and probably because it's so new, but I talked to one parent that wasn't given it.
Oh,
So
at
went to the conference and.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess, is this something that there's going to be a policy on that, or can we make it a policy that?
There will be an
that they're gonna
expectation,
be
yeah.
Mailed
A
out if
practice,
the
yeah.
parents aren't given?
You can make a referral to the policy committee.
All right.
Okay? All right, go ahead, Denise.
Okay. So the next slide, we just wanted to share with you to make you aware of the fact that the state testing is actually in the legislature. So it has been passed by the state legislature that we're required to assess students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 on reading and math. It does say writing because the CMT used to have writing, but this assessment, the SBAC, really only has open-ended responses. It doesn't have an essay portion. And then the bottom paragraph is the state legislation about testing students in grades 5, 8, and 11 annually in science. So, we do share this with parents because sometimes they have questions about why their child has to take the test.
And some parents do choose to opt out. They have to put it in writing. But we cannot opt out any students.
Right.
We must provide the assessment.
Right. And this just shows you a little bit of an estimation about how long the testing takes. So in terms of grades 3 through 5, the ELA is about an hour and a half, and same with 6 through 8. The math is a little bit longer because it has a performance task. And then I think part of that slide got cut off, but it had the total times for math and ELA.
Sorry, it's not on there.
Oh, that's okay, and I'll just summarize it for you.
I think it's in our handout, though.
It's a total of 4 hours for ELA and math for grades 3 through 5, and a total of 4.5 hours for grades 6 through 8 for ELA and math. And we space it out over the course of a week to 2 weeks, so the kids take one subtest per day.
How long is the subtest?
The subtests generally are between 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh, okay.
And if they need more time, they can get more time.
Right, and that leads us into our next slide, which is very busy visually.
Yeah.
But we wanted to.
And I apologize, I don't know how anybody can read this. I needed a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share it with you because I wanted you to see the universal design that goes into the platform of these tests. This-
Denise, can you hold tight for a second? Were there any questions on the prior slide with the hours? No? All right, go ahead, Denise.
Okay, so this is affectionately known as our accessibility chart. It changes every year, and you see 3 columns, a blue, orange, and a red. And what this relates to is there's 3 groups of accommodations. The blue is called universal accommodations. Those are accommodations that are available to every student who takes the test. An example is they can pause the test and take a break. The orange are called designated supports. Those are for students who might be in a Tier 3 intervention. So there's students who are receiving intervention, and we know that they might need some additional accommodations. And some of those accommodations you can see could be text-to-speech in ELA, not the items, but the directions. And then the third column are accommodations that are available to students with an IEP or a 504. They have all the accommodations that the other students have, plus some very specific ones. So one, for example, would be, if you're a student who's struggling, you could have the ELA passages read to you, in addition to the directions. So that you might ask, well, why would we read the ELA passages to the student? The student's not reading them. You're not really getting a reading score that represents what the student can read. But the purpose would be to help the student not experience a great deal of frustration taking the test, because maybe the student is really proficient in math. So we want them to take the SBAC, but we don't want them to become frustrated that those reading passages are really above their ability level. So we might give them a reader for the ELA passages to help them complete the test and not experience a great deal of frustration.
You'll also get at least a window of opportunity on seeing if the child's listening comprehension, is there, too.
That's right.
So, you can kind of decipher where the child fits.
And then the last thing I want to share with you is you'll see at the top of each column, embedded or non-embedded. An embedded accommodation is one that comes directly in the test platform. So for example, the calculator. The calculator is embedded in the platform. A non-embedded accommodation is one that the teacher provides. So an example of a non-embedded would be a hundreds chart. And we have to give a specific hundreds chart that comes from the state. Another non-embedded would be scratch paper or a multiplication chart, and it's a specific one from the state. So there are accommodations that are built into the platform and accommodations that the teachers provide. And one of the more recent practices we've had to really be sure that we're being diligent on is making sure that if students have an Apple Watch, that those are put away during the testing, because they're really not supposed to have access to the internet during testing.
And not only Apple, what about Androids? Like,
Any type of
Smartwatch.
electronic
smartwatches.
device, yeah.
And their computers are actually kind of shut down from the internet,
Right.
too. So they can only get onto this test site, and they can't go other places.
But I would say probably the biggest benefit to the online test delivery system is that the students can take as much time as they need. They can pause it, they can go back. If they're in the middle of a test, They can pause it, they have to go back on that same day, otherwise they lose their work. But they can kind of take a break if they're getting overloaded or not feeling well, and then come back to it later in the day.
Does the whole class take the test at the same time?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they break up into small groups. So students who have the reader option need to wear earbuds, and they're tested in separate rooms. So they have a whole schedule where it's kind of like all hands on deck in terms of proctors. And right now, they're doing a lot of training, because each year, we go through all of these materials and make sure that everyone who's proctoring is trained.
I would say, though, throughout the year, we're doing the interim assessments, and it's giving us really valuable data. And it also readies our kids in taking the test and feeling comfortable and knowing how to get on, and the teachers, it makes them very comfortable. So I think we've noticed a real change in this process on a little more, I don't know, care and concern and kind of feeling ready because of that.
What happens to the students that finish the test before the other students do?
They bring a book
Are
to
they-
read
they're
quietly
quiet?
at their desk. Yep, yep. But the students who have extended time are tested separately. So
Okay.
they don't feel like they have to finish at the same time as everyone
'cause-
else.
yeah.
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 That was my concern. 'Cause
Yeah.
sometimes you see like Adrian finished first, and I might be still working, say, oh, I must be stupid. He finished first.
I never finished first.
Ah.
I appreciate the thought.
I lifted you up, Adrian.
Well, and they're encouraged too to go back and check their work, which is another benefit to the platform, is that they can go back and look at what they've already done and make
Yep,
any corrections
correct.
if needed during that time as well.
And then the other beauty of this chart, and then I'll stop talking about it, because you can tell I love this chart, is a lot of the links are hyperlinks. So the teachers have easy access to the hundreds charts, the multiplication charts, some of the translation glossaries, and some of the training materials that they need. So for example, if it's a human reader and not the computer reading it, there's certain training materials that they can download directly by some of the links on this chart.
Quick question. I know it's a different avenue of testing, but this chart, I agree, I like it a lot. It's great to look at, and there's a lot of information packed in a very concise fashion. When it comes to like IB and AP exams, is there anything similar to this for those tests?
I really wouldn't be the one to answer that. I don't know.
Who,
I would think
I
if they have a 504 or an IEP, they
Right.
would have accommodations if it's in their IEP or 504, but I don't know if there's, I know with the SAT, there's certain, like for extended time, it can be 50% of the test time, like time and a half, 50% or time and a half. So I think there are more parameters around the accommodations, but I believe that they are allowed to have them if it's required.
is
We
that?
can get more details on that, though.
Yeah.
You know specifically accommodations for AP testing, is that what you're asking?
For, yeah,
A, but
AP
IB.
and IB, yeah. Yeah, like a similar chart
I had
like
to
that
stop
would be
the
great
sharing for one
to
second.
to understand what's available.
Does it only come in Spanish for a different language, or,
Comes in, there's lots of different languages.
good.
Yep.
All right, any questions on page that Denise just showed us?
Oh, we got some questions for you,
Yeah.
coming up next.
We thought we'd say, you know, you remember that TV show, Are You As Smart as a Fifth Grader? I just thought if we could collect like a sample, so you could kind of get a gist of what the kids are being expected to know and be able to do. And I think we've got a sample from English language arts and mathematics and even science for fifth grade. Even in the math, you can see there are worded problems, and there's also, given an equation, you know, which situation can be best represented by the equation, which is a little different than you and I probably had in math class, because usually we'd get the problem, and then we'd have to write the equation, right, and solve the problem.
love this
So it's a little bit different thinking, and sometimes there's multiple right answers. So you have to pick one, two, or all of the above, and, you know, you can kind of see, and that one I know I've seen before, but, you know, really understanding what would be yawning black throat of the chimney, you know, and how it's being used.
I picked
And,
D.
and what you pick as your best choice.
I think D, I don't know if that's
I know,
right.
that's a hard one.
I had a
I'd go
question.
with D as well.
Yawning, I,
Right.
I had a question not only about this one, but about the next one, in terms of the anxiety that this might provoke with some of the kids. Because I can see a logical way of choosing more than one.
Right.
I have my preference, but I can see a logical choice for myself on this one between B and D. Well, I'm not allowed on this one. It doesn't say on this one that I can put more than one. So if it said put as many as you think appropriate, that would be different. So I'm concerned about, there's nothing we can do about the way they structure the test. And I'll get to the next one there, but I hope that our faculty and staff, when they will look at these before they administer it, and use their eyes to see what they think could be possibly anxiety-producing to a student, and share that through administration to you, so we can provide feedback to CSED.
And that's why we have them take notes, not on the test itself, but on any behaviors that are happening in the classroom, or anything that they think, could be a distraction or whatever, so that if we get results from that teacher in that class, and we are really trying to make sure that, especially in the middle school, because their results were not great last year, and they really looked at how they were assessing, and they've changed how they're assessing. So the math teacher has their children sitting in their math class taking the test. And so I think we're hopeful that the kids will care a little more. The teachers certainly care. Not that it's going to, sway it one way or the other, but we're hoping that it'll be a better test setting, and the teacher will be able to read the students and make sure that they are more comfortable.
Well, I'm glad that we're looking for the nonverbals as indicators, but I'd also like to see our adult educators also look at the instrument and give their opinions as well. It's not an either-or, I think it's a both-and.
Yeah, what are you thinking, Ben?
I would say, Matthew, with the science tests, which you have an example, I think it's the third example, we've had our teachers, and we routinely do every year, have them take the interims, because those are available. You can take them as many times as you want. And it really is eye-opening for teachers to kind of struggle, through some of these questions like students do. But it ends up being a really good experience, because then you can kind of talk through how you would model thinking through those questions to students. So
It's
having
a learning
teachers
opportunity, teaching opportunity.
for teachers.
Yeah, and even in reviewing the data, and I know we talked about this as a board last year when we were looking at results, not only do we ask teachers to notice it in the moment, but when you're looking at the data, like, I think, I know one of the observations last year was that we noticed kids struggled on those questions that had 2 or 3 steps. Because, we talked about a perseverance issue where, they would find one answer, and then when we would continue reading and it says to go back and find a second or a third, they would give up and move on. And so, then we sort of looked at how we could incorporate that into our planning and instruction to build that, build that perseverance. But I remember that was an eye-opening piece of data, that those questions that asked for 2 or 3 answers to one question, we tended to get wrong because kids gave up.
Do you teach test-taking strategies? I know when I taught GED, I don't know if you do, Ian, we teach them test-taking strategies.
Absolutely.
And one time I went to an NSBA conference, and I forget who the speaker was in the workshop. They talked about test-taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially, I know there was a lot done when it moved on to online, because I think there was a big dip in the scores, because there was just, the kids weren't used to manipulating the screen. They weren't used to using a calculator on the screen, all
And the
those are
science,
things
they're doing experiments.
that add to the anxiety and add to the kids getting frustrated and then, giving up on an answer. So I do know we do a lot of that. And I think the kids now, obviously, by the 5th, 6th grade, they're used to it, of course. But, the little ones, in 3rd grade, it's their first time with it. So I know they do take the time to introduce the kids to.
Yeah. Because the teacher could do a lot, too, with reducing the anxiety of a student. So hopefully the teachers are doing
Yeah,
that.
they make sure they have a snack, everybody has breakfast, and, and they practice, there is a practice test.
You can see
In
who might
addition to
need
the
a break.
interims.
Well, that's, the interims give them experience and exposure to these types of questions along the way throughout the year, every year. So by the time they get to this, it's almost like old business, right? Like they
Right.
know how to really navigate the system.
Yeah. On the science end, we try to give all of our fifth graders experience with all the different question types, because instead, you could be doing an online investigation, you could be creating a model, you could be answering a fill in the blank. There's so many different ways that kids have to respond, but leading up to the test, we try to give them exposure to each of those different test style questions, and the various tools that go along with them to try to make the kids more comfortable in using those.
We're real believers that the teachers need to do the math, need to do the science, need to do the writing and the reading, and then be able to discuss it, because, you know, when they get in front of kids and they're doing this work, they like to feel more comfortable, and then they're better able to assess how the kids are answering them, you know, in their different ways.
And I think an important part of sharing these with you tonight, too, is to recognize that it's not like the old school CMT test where you had a paper and pencil in front of you, you were asked to computate something, and then you went on to the next question. Every single question that these kids are asked, there's multi-layers, there's multi-skills. It's not like one specific thing that they're being asked to do. They have to integrate information. They have to disseminate between some of it. They have to problem solve and calculate, and, right? So they're required to do multiple and use multiple skills for every single question.
Interesting.
Jen has a question.
I know you had mentioned,
Jen.
I know you had mentioned that there's teachers in the classroom and there's support. So some teachers have like 2 or 3 classrooms and they teach that same subject. So there's probably situations where you have a cohort of kids who are taking exams, but it's not their teacher who's proctoring the exam. Is that fair?
That used to happen at the middle school, but they really made a concerted effort to make sure that the ELA teacher
Is
and
their
class
teacher.
is their teacher, the math teacher and the science teacher. And then in the classroom for for 3 through 5, it's definitely their classroom teacher. There might be an additional person helping support, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, or is it their classroom too? Because sometimes, like environmental, like if they're sitting in a different classroom, different teacher, might create
If they
anxieties for the
needed a
kid.
small group, it's in their IEP, then they would have maybe a different setting, and their special education teacher maybe with them.
Okay, great, thank you.
If we could go to the math problem. I'm not a math person, so I'll ask you, is there any number between 0 and 10 that multiplied by 100, where this person claims that multiplying any number between 0 and 10 by 100, the product is greater than 100? So then the question is, what is a possible number that can be multiplied by 100 to show that Lisa's claim is not correct? That's the indefinite article A, not the definite article the. And then the second sentence is enter your answer, which is singular. Now, as far as I know, both 0 and 1 times 100 are not greater than 100. So we have 2 mathematically correct answers, but the question is structured in such a way as to be a second-order analysis, and I really don't think we can expect 5th graders to do a second-order analysis of English linguistics.
So it is true that the betweenness, you have to understand what any number between 0 and 10 means, not including those numbers, right?
This is why
Right,
lawyers have
between
the 0
So
and 10, not
you're
even
right,
0
you're
and
very
10.
right that mathematics now is a language, and the structure of the problem and the way that it's being asked.
You're
can be
absolutely right.
very
And I miss,
complicated.
and
Yeah.
I think I'm really not that shabby on understanding English, and I missed that between. I looked at it as an inclusive number, not an exclusive number.
It's ambiguous.
So what I'm saying is there's a level
We
of,
picked that one on purpose.
well, good. So I'm not as smart as a 5th grader. I'll own that. I'll own that. But my point is goes back to what I said before. We need to watch the nonverbals from the kids, and we need the adults' eyes on the questions so we can give our feedback to CSED. I think it's essential to do both.
And I think
Well, they
part
don't
of that.
want all the questions to be easy, Matthew.
Well,
They're gonna
okay,
have some
so-
difficult ones here.
But I think the.
I made it to the 6th grade, I'll have you know.
The validity is really important, and they do throw out questions that come up as, not working out for the majority of the kids, right? So they do take them out, and I think the practice test and the alternative are other very well-constructed, or they deem it as worthy for the test. So they get those additional test questions for practice questions and for the interim assessment. But the ones that get thrown out, get thrown out. And that does happen. So I don't know if this one was one that was thrown out or not, but it does make you think.
Go ahead, Ian.
So just to circle back on what you said about the integrated questions, the integrated format of the questions, there's no section of these tests that just has straight, like, one component or two, like a set of questions that's looking to assess a particular skill or a set of, or knowledge?
There are some, yes.
There are some that
Yeah,
are
so there
targeted?
are some, as an example, there may be a multiplication question, just
Okay.
straight up, but that's not the bulk of the assessment.
Understood.
Yeah.
And it's got to,
Right.
really, they've got to address all the the Connecticut core standards, too.
Yeah.
Right.
And science is like that too. So kids will see a cluster, where there's a phenomenon that they have to analyze and do some things with. But then when they flip to their next question set, it might be one question
Okay.
they've got to answer. And then it might flip back to another scenario. So it kind of
Right.
alternates back and forth.
Right, and yeah, so that's good to hear, because, where I was going with that was, it can be hard to assess. There may be some deficiency somewhere, but if they're all integrated, it can be hard for the recipient of that information to figure out where the deficiency really is. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
The next part is sort of a different path now. We're going to head towards the Connecticut report card.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask Lauren if she's going to sort of take you through sort of what's available out there for you and how to access it.
Well, so it seemed to fit in beautifully with the state assessment, because a lot of what you can find on this particular website is the results to our district and all districts throughout the state, how they're performing in relation to us. So the Connecticut report card is available to everyone. It's a public site as part of the State Department of Ed. And at the end of this, I'll show you where you can go to get that, and I'll show you the live version. So what you're looking at now are really just snapshots, screenshots of the different pieces to the site, because I want to just walk you through some of this. And the purpose is really to give you like a comprehensive, an overview of like how comprehensive the data is and how much data that we provide to the state and the state collects from us, and then manipulates and works out so that we can get a really good snapshot of who we are as a district, how we're performing in relation to other districts similar to ours and different. So on the state website, the Connecticut report card, you can choose any district you want. So in this case, obviously, we're working with Groton. And the very first part is it's an overview. It's a snapshot of our district. So you'll see the number of students that we have, the number of schools or programs, the number of dollars per pupil, certified staff, and the accountability index. Now, understand that the students, much of this information is pulled from that snapshot you've heard us talk about. So we have 2 snapshots a year. One is in October, the other is in June. So this information is currently, most of it is a snapshot from October. So in terms of our student numbers. The 10 schools, that also includes our Central Office Academy, our Transition Academy, and our New Beginnings program. Okay, and that's why you see 10 schools rather than just the 7. If you look all the way over to the right, you see that accountability index. And really what that is that's our report card score from the district. And this is created by a number of different indicators. There's actually 12 indicators that the state looks at to give us this score. Okay, and this index score is out of 85.
Oh, it's at 85 and not 100?
Not 100.
Well, that makes me feel better, because I was saying, that's not a good score, people.
Nope, it's out of 85, that's the target, and that, you'll see in different places, the index may look different. Tonight's purpose isn't necessarily to look at the data, because we have gone through a lot of this before, so this is information that's already been shared. The purpose is so that you can see it and you have a place to go. If you have a question and you want to look some things up yourself or try to understand it a little better, a place where you can go to do that. So we're really not focusing on the actual numbers as much tonight. We're focusing on more of what do the numbers mean, if that makes sense.
So that keeps us on track, then.
Could I have a question?
Try not to
Can I
wander
repeat what
too
Lauren
much.
just said? Not to get caught up in the data.
Are you speaking to Adrian over
I
there?
am always happy to sit and go through this.
But we can go back to it if you have questions.
Do you have a question on that first page?
Yeah, I do. So I might be wrong on this, but I thought our goal was 85.
That's the target number.
So,
That's our
but it's
target.
out of 100 though, correct? Like, so some districts could be over 85?
Yes, yes.
All right.
I apologize, and you are right on that, yes. The target is 85. You caught me, oh my gosh. I got carried away.
And there's different targets for different things,
There
just to
are.
make it a little more annoying.
Yes, you are absolutely right, and I apologize for misspeaking. The target is 85 for the state, so everyone in the state, that's our target goal, is to get to 85. Yes,
By
My apologies.
2030?
by 2030.
Matthew?
Sure. Well, I understood you to have said that there are 12 indicators that make up this accountability index, and I don't want to get into it now because it'll just take up too much time. But if you could be gracious enough to send us the list of what those 12 indicators are.
We're going to show you right now.
You're going to show me right
We're going
now?
to show you.
You're a step
Okay.
ahead of
You
them.
are.
Okay. So I guess the question is, to whom are we accountable? Are we accountable to the students? Are we accountable to the state?
All of the above.
The community?
So are there different metrics? I mean, theoretically, if there are 12,
There are
we could
different
do
metrics.
wonderful in 11 and really
You got that one right.
pretty poor in one, and that
Yep.
could, that,
It gives us a lot of information to,
okay, well, I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
turning the page.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Phil.
Sorry. So, let me start, this might be helpful to you. If you look, I'm gonna actually jump down to where it says chronically absent, just to speak to what Matthew was asking, where it says percentage of students chronically
which
absent.
is all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner.
It's all the way on the bottom, on the right. You'll notice next to each graphic or chart, there's a little circle with an I in it. That's information. So once you get to the live site, and I'll show you how to get there, if you click on that, it helps you to understand exactly what they're measuring there. Notice on the chronically absent, there's almost like a little clock or timer, it looks like. That tells you that that is one of the indicators that goes into the accountability index. So chronically absent, our students who are chronically absent, that number helps to determine what our accountability index is. So the higher our chronic absenteeism is, that actually hurts our accountability score. So the closer we are to see that target, which is less than 5%, the closer we are to that score, the better our accountability score. The better the score is towards our accountability index. Does that make sense? Okay.
And just noticing the shape of the data, we have a place to go and grow and reduce that chronic absenteeism. That has been a problem, you can see, especially during COVID.
But what's bad is the state has gotten worse
Well,
during this
yeah.
time period. So like our goal
Our goal is always to beat the state.
exactly, our goal has
Get better.
gotten like easier, I guess. I
Well,
don't know
yeah,
how to-
yeah.
No, our goal is to get less than 5%.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the true goal.
That's, yeah.
Go ahead,
Just
Ian.
a quick follow-up question. You said that the little clock insignia is an indicator of it being an indicator, right?
It's an indicator for the accountability index.
For the accountability,
Yep.
you said, and there's 12 indicators that go into the accountability index.
Yes.
So that's one of the
that's just
12.
one
That's
of
one
them.
of the 12.
So
Now,
the
the
rest of
other
these
things
graphs
are
are
not
not.
indicators, they're just measures that collect on district enrollment.
Right.
The enrollment of race, ethnicity, those are all things that are important in our profile, but they're not necessarily what we're scored on.
Okay. All right, I see
Yeah.
some more down here.
Right.
So are all 12 in this packet?
Yep.
Yes, they are. Yep. So district enrollment, again, that's up based on our October 1 snapshot. It gives you a good overview of how we are, what our makeup is in terms of race and ethnicity, free and reduced lunch, which 40%, in order for a school to qualify as Title I, we have to have 40% of that school being free or reduced lunch. As a district, we're at 54%. The nice thing about the public site is it does give you a comparison. So as an example, we can see where we are in relationship to the state. You can also choose other districts to look at. So you can see where you are in relationship to other districts as well for most of these. Again, when you get to the live side, you'll be able to see that.
How difficult would it be for you to, at some point, maybe when we get the full year data, to have the state, us, and then the DIRG as another column, and maybe a selected number, an aggregate of the selected number of neighboring districts?
So we have done that in the past in different presentations, so we can absolutely share some of those presentations, because we look at both our DIRG, which is also an alliance districts, and we look at our neighbors always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have for our, where you said, see percentage of EL, English learners. We have 2 schools that are currently considered bilingual schools. That is Fitch High School and MRMS, Mystic River. In order to qualify as a bilingual school, you have to have more than 20 students in a particular school to be considered. And both of those cases, there's 44 students.
In a particular language, and the language is Spanish.
Thank you. In a particular language as well. Yep.
And our percentage of students with disabilities is typically higher than the state because we have students moving in with IEPs that have already been identified from other districts.
And we do hear that the military people often will choose to stay here and get orders within Groton because of the services that they receive.
Yeah, I heard that too. Matthew?
Did you want me to move on?
That,
I don't want to cut you off. You have more to do?
Nope, that, I was just going to add on to what Denise said, which was for the percentage of students with disabilities. That does not include students that may have a 504 plan. This is specific to IEPs.
Okay, so I do have a couple more questions. I'm looking at the percentage of students chronically absent, and what I was wondering, I've heard you say, Susan, that we have a number of homeless students who are living in room, maybe in a hotel with 4 or 5 people in a single room, and I'm wondering, particularly with this situation that's evolving with the housing. And by the way, thank you very much for articulating what we already knew, that we will provide for homeless kids if somebody is unfortunately dislocated. Thank you for that. But is there a way to find out roughly in this area, in the Ivy Court area and in another area that I've heard about, how many children are likely to be affected, and what is the linkage, what's the relationship, if you can find it out, between the kids who we've defined as homeless and absenteeism?
We're already a step ahead. Lauren's been working on that data.
Great.
And I do
Thank
want
you.
it, we will be providing a meeting, and, we've talked about that. I want to talk to the board more about that. We should probably make it as an agenda item to see how we can help.
Thank you.
service
I'm
that family.
very glad to hear you're all doing that.
Yeah.
Great job.
We have
There are definitely families that are impacted.
Okay. The other,
We have a policy too.
We do have a
Matthew,
policy.
that says if a student started the school year in Groton, they can continue to the end of the school
Oh,
year.
I understood that, and Susan articulated that publicly, which was very important for her
Yeah.
to have done. I was now looking at the situation that's emerging and the possibility that there may be some serious dislocations. I'd like us to get ahead of that, and I'm glad to hear you're doing it.
Right.
Moving on.
Well, we're starting to look at the data, and then we want to meet with folks. So we do know that there's 23 families and 40-something students.
43 students.
In the Ivy Court
Just on Ivy
Oh,
Court.
wow. There's a lot of
And I
students
understand
there.
there's another neighborhood to
There's
be
other
affected
neighborhoods,
too.
and we're getting that data now. Yep.
Okay.
So in the column of percentage students with disabilities, how do we explain that we're consistently a high number of students with disabilities compared to the state level? I'm not challenging anything being wrong, I just don't understand why on that particular you have that
Sure.
reality.
Sure. We have a highly mobile a segment of our population that's mobile, and that means that when they come in with an IEP, which many times they do, we have to implement it. It's really a portable document. So sometimes, it's not by the nature of our identification of students, it's just the nature that they move in with an IEP.
So then I'm understanding you to say it's an artifact of the high mobility, the relative high mobility within our district
We feel
compared to
that
other
that's
districts.
Yeah, I think that's a factor. I think also, as Susan said, we're positioned between Boston and New York. So I think if you have a child who has some complex needs, either medically, cognitively, developmentally, this is a desirable location. I've had many military families tell me that our services are vastly better than some of the other, states that they've been stationed in. And I think that, there's also a program called the Exceptional Family Member Program, where military spouses can request to stay because they have an exceptional family member, and that happens frequently.
Yeah.
Great to know, thank you.
That's a compliment to our district.
It's a compliment to
To
our
you.
state as well.
It is.
Okay.
You're right.
Moving on.
So another set of data, so you may have noticed like that on this particular site, it's broken down into different categories, right? So there's our student category, our educator data, our performance data. So there's different clusters of data that's collected. This is based on our educators, so our teachers, our staff, our faculty. The FTE, again, certified FTE, that does include our part-time, so it basically takes all of the faculty, adds it all together. So if there's a part-time and a part-time, that might equal a whole, as an example. The next set of graphs is comparing administrators, teachers to the state, so we can get a sense of where are we in relationship to the state and what our makeup is in terms of educators in the district.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when this is live, and you hover over, it actually gives you numbers.
It will actually give you the
Yeah,
numbers.
you can hover over, so you might see a 2 or 3, like you see that little slice of orange, which is the instructional specialist, and it doesn't look like anything, but you might find 1 or 2 people in there or something.
Right.
A couple.
So that dark orange, that large piece of the pie, that's our general ed teachers. And you can see that we're pretty spot on to the state in most of the areas. That second layer of orange is the district administrators. And then that light blue is school administrators, and then you have special ed teachers in gray.
Right.
So it's just an interesting way to look at the makeup of our district. Again, teacher to staff ratio or percentage in terms of race and ethnicity. You can see that is something that has
We
been in
have to
works.
work
We've
on.
talked about, our plans to improve that. Because it's, it speaks for itself.
Yeah. It's been speaking for itself for several years.
So with the plans that have been ongoing and in place and continue to improve.
Little by little.
Yeah, yep. And then the only thing I want to point out is the classroom teacher attendance. And for some reason, they seem to be a year behind with this data, so we don't have the classroom teacher attendance data yet for last year. So I'm expecting that to come up at some point in the near future. It seems like that may be one of the last pieces that's been reported from the state. So the 21-22 was the last,
Well, I hope 22-23 is better than this.
All I've got to
Because
say
what's that,
is,
16 days a year that the teachers are absent?
Yeah, 16.7, yeah.
And they work 10 months? So that's an average of 1 day a month about?
And if you see the shape of the data, we were kind of neck and neck
Two?
with the
Oh, my
state.
bad.
Roughly, yeah.
That's not good.
It's
Well,
somewhere in
and-
between 1 and 2.
1 and 2, thank you.
So I just want to point out that with our higher rate of healthcare costs, also is the higher rate of attendance. So people getting those operations and the surgeries and being out sick, it's like a direct correlation with what we're spending. So the hope is that people will get better.
And don't forget, 21, 22, we were encouraging people to stay home.
Yeah,
That was when we were coming back and if they experienced any symptoms, so that was
yeah,
a
they had to stay out
different time.
so
All
many
right,
days.
Mr. Piazza, we'll see that whole shoot.
But we're not talking data tonight.
Data tonight.
We'll see.
I know, it's hard to not go there, isn't it?
Matthew and Adrian.
For those who are watching, I would like to point out, as you're listening and looking at the chart, that the business about teacher attendance or teacher absence shooting up is a national phenomenon that's an artifact directly of COVID. It is not a Groton phenomenon. It is one we need to work on in Groton, but please understand it is not a Groton phenomenon.
I understand that, but we're in Groton.
I
I
understand.
don't care about what happened in Rhode Island. I'm
And it's
interested in
still
what
2
happened in
days.
Groton. I know
But I
you,
don't want
I
our
know,
citi- I don't
I'm
want our
interested in
citizens to
Groton,
think it's our
Connecticut.
problem.
I'm interested in that, and I'll give you this year, like
We
I
want to
said,
do
for
better.
COVID.
We
Thank
definitely
you.
want to do better.
We're gonna keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
We'll
'Cause
duke it
then-
out.
then- Then your philosophy would be like, oh, this district, they did terrible in math, and the whole state is doing terrible, so that's okay, we do terrible too.
Well,
Nah.
you're understanding what I'm saying in a way that I didn't intend you to, but you're certainly entitled to.
You're trying to put a little smooth on it.
I am, because it's not as if we alone are doing it.
know,
We are struggling with it, we're working with
Yeah,
it.
we're working on it.
So moving along, I see a lot of little circles that really,
we
oh,
forgot
I'm
about
sorry,
Adrian.
Adrian. I apologize, Adrian. I'm sorry.
Yeah, how is this information given to the state? Do we supply all of this information to the state?
Yeah.
And when do we do that?
Reports. Through different reports that we're responsible for throughout the year. Just a couple. So it comes from it depends on what specifically throughout the year they do, they have certain dates and timelines for individual reports and then like cleanup of the reports, so any errors that may come across. It's a pretty intense process. But yes, so this is just one piece that's pulled at a particular time of the year. It comes from that information comes through human resources and frontline and all of that. So depending on what they're asking for, it may come from a different place in Power School or one of our systems.
Every department in central office is highly affected, and multiple departments may be working on one report.
All right, how long, what's the lag time in between when we have the data in the district and when it ends up on the state website?
It's dependent on a lot of variables, to be honest with you. So most of the 22, 23 data starts popping up on the website in the fall, usually like late fall. Some of it may, and then you'll see it'll trickle in. It's never, here it all is. It kind of comes along the way. By about December, most of it is available on the website.
And then this just really appeared recently, the report card. We've been looking for it, and it doesn't have everything up to date yet. So, you know,
This has
as they're
been-
getting,
I've been looking at this, this came up last year, right?
yes, it comes up each year, but it's more towards it's one of the last things that they produce. And it's not even complete yet.
And then my second question, when are we going to get to talk about the details of this report?
It's up to the board.
When do we get to talk about the data?
Well, we'll talk to that, about that when we finish, okay?
All right.
Jen, go ahead.
Well, and I think that's a good question. This information, most of what is already on here has been discussed throughout this school year. A lot of the conversations have already happened in the fall, like in terms of performance and, the chronic absenteeism. I believe we talked about that later last year and over the summer. So it's part of that plan that the board has for when they address different things.
But we knew that we had new board members, so we really wanted to kind of showcase this, and we can go into some more detail and get you some of those presentations so that you can take a look, too. And then if you have
We can,
questions.
if it would help, I can send you the old presentation so that you have that information. Although it's not really necessary because it's,
They can get it.
you can come right here to get it
Right.
as well. Okay,
I think he wants more of a discussion than,
gotcha.
Yeah, I've seen the old,
yeah.
I think it was at the old the meeting.
Okay.
In August when we kind of went over this.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you were there.
But there is some data in here which is relevant to the budget right now, even, like when we talk about certified staff in our district versus the state as a whole and things like that. So it might be worth having some of those discussions.
So that's why we wanted to show this to you and then give you the tools so you can kind of get on and play around on it. And then it might even give you more questions to ask and more insight. So we were strategic in doing this because we thought this would be very interesting and kind of get us ready for when we get the new data as well.
Go ahead, Jen.
I know everyone was looking at that top right corner regarding race and ethnicity, and everyone was saying, yep, we need to do some improvement on that. Totally agree. But I just want to make sure that as a district, when we're looking at applications, that the applications are being brought forth, but I don't want someone to be hired just because they're female, Asian, and it's whoever is best for the job, and if the person happens to be white, they happen to be white, you know? If we don't have, I don't want us to get into a situation where it's reverse discrimination, so that's something that we just need to keep an eye on.
You're absolutely right. And that's something that could be a future topic, too, on the DEI committee and the work that they've been doing, and show you a little more about how we do that.
So in terms of instruction and resources, the information that's collected, you'll notice on this page, there are a couple of those little icons. So college and career readiness, the courses that are offered and taken, that's a part of how, that accountability index that we talked about. And really what the information they use to collect this and to meet that target, it's based on 11th and 12th graders in particular. And it's how many of those 11th and 12th graders are taking at least two courses such as an AP, an IB, one of the CTE courses, or college credit courses. So that's how that number is determined. That's what we're shooting for. So
But it also takes the career pathways into
Yes.
consideration, the CTE courses, too, which are important.
On track, it's basically, they take a cohort, every cohort of ninth graders, and of that cohort, how many of them are graduating in 4 years? That's pretty much it, to look at the trajectory and are they on track to graduate? Is that freshman cohort holding 5 full year credits? That's what they use to determine the on track for high school graduation. So is that ninth grade cohort, do they have, how many of them have a full course load of 5 full year credits? Next to that, and you can't see, because of the screen that's in the way, that's our access, that is another indicator. So they also look at that, in determining our accountability index. And
What
what
do you
that,
mean by arts access?
so basically from ninth grade to 12th grade, how many of our students are enrolled in some form of arts, whether it's performing arts, visual arts, drawing studio, any of those courses? They wanted to see our students enrolled in them each year.
And you might also see the targets. So the targets vary. So the college and career target's 75, the on-track to high school graduation's 94, and the arts access is 60.
How do they determine the target?
That is a
They
very
being the
good
state.
question.
For each target, it's different, and it's a pretty involved and lengthy process that they go through, I think. It is on the state website. I couldn't tell you for each one in particular off the top of my head, but I'm happy to find that information and share it with you.
Many of the targets are 75, though. The majority are 75.
Yep,
Except for attendance, that's 5%.
yep. So time with non-disabled peers, so that really looks at students that have an IEP, and are they with peers that are not disabled 79 to 100% of the time. That's what they're looking at as they come to that score.
Denise, are you happy with that number?
Yeah, I think that, I would like to see it higher. It used to be the target was 80%. The goal is, we know students learn best when they're with their peers. So we would like to see that higher.
What prevents this number from being higher? Is there something like in the schedule?
Well, I think some of our students have some complex needs, and they require a smaller setting that's more individualized.
And we've brought a lot of students that were outplaced because of their significant needs back. So that it's really important whether they're autistic, ABA, that they are with their peers, but it might not be 80%.
Right.
But they are there
Right.
for, in all different times of day.
Right. And also to that, to answer that question, I
Yeah.
mean, there's times where, a heterogeneous mixture is preferential and beneficial, and there's other times where a homogeneous is a better way, depending on the student's needs and what's happening. So,
Right.
mathematically maybe things are changing and, 80% is just not, is there a target? I don't see a target.
Yeah, I don't see it.
This
It
one
used to
here.
be 80% with the PJ case. That's going back quite a few years. But 79 to 100% is considered general education.
Okay.
Whereas 49 to 78 is resource, and then lower than that is self-contained. So we do try to shoot for as much time with non-disabled peers as we can.
Right. But the state's not giving any guidance on this one as far as a target, it looks like.
No, and I'm kind of glad they're not, because it is an individual decision.
It's a range.
Right. Understandable.
And so percentage primary disability, the only things that maybe would be worth mentioning here is what other health impairment may mean. And so in that case, it could be like a child that has ADHD, and so they're under an IEP versus a 504 plan, and please step in, Denise.
No, you're right.
And then the other disability, which is that light blue, would be something along the lines of like an impairment with their vision or hearing, things like that. So those would be the only two worth mentioning right now that may have had you wondering what exactly is that. And then our per pupil expenditure.
Any questions on that page?
Just to note, the per pupil expenditure, consistently, we are just a
Lower.
hair under the state average. Okay.
Which is another beauty to this particular page. It's historical data. In some cases, it doesn't go as far back just because of when the state started to collect it. But it's just a quick, easy place I need to understand a little bit more about the district. What's available to me, so you can see that historical. Is it an anomaly year, or is it consistent? Like, are we seeing that this is a trend and we need to look closer at it, or that it's something we're doing well, or whatever the case may be. And again, here's just more special ed expenditures by category. So where is that money going? And then how is our money coming in, percentage of revenue by sources? Where are we getting some of our funding from?
Bev, may I make a global comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Lauren, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think one of the challenges we faced this year on the budget has been that we were trying to do a year's worth of education in one joint meeting and one public hearing. And I would love to have us do, or have administration consider the possibility of getting invited quarterly, where we can present some of this stuff, tell them not only our successes, we need to also tell them our challenges, and have that education process going on 4 times a year with the council at least, and twice a year with at least the education RTM people, so that when we come with a budget, they're not looking at numbers without the context that we have been familiar with all year long. Not everything is necessary to be in it, but so much of what Lauren has done could be a part of that.
I agree, and I am invited, and in the beginning, in the fall, I usually do a presentation on data, and then, we do our budget presentations, and then usually in the spring, there's another, kind of looking at the summer and looking at the year in retrospect, but you're right, to be able to be there more often and be able to showcase some of this.
I think that will make our job, admin and the board, a lot easier if those folks feel that they're informed
And not just.
in a regular way,
Yeah.
not just when we're coming asking for money.
Well,
Right.
Susan can go to the RTM meeting every month, and she's always on the agenda at the RTM meeting.
I'm not telling her what she should do, I'm telling my opinion. That's all.
Well, and it typically is about 3 to 4 times a year that we do that, but maybe it can be more often.
Well, you'll give it some consideration.
Yeah.
We could put that in her evaluation. She's gonna appreciate
More
me for
communications.
saying that. Dean.
I'm all for disclosure, letting the other folks know what's going on, but be careful. People may not be reading the data the way you're reading it. What you call a challenge, other people may say, that's a reason not to give you any more money, because we're giving you enough. We've gold-plated this, I'm just making their devil's advocate. We've gold-plated the schools, and this is what we got, so we're done.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yep. In a
Adrian?
perfect world.
So don't be, just know that going in.
Yeah, it may be helpful, though. I'm just going back a couple of slides where FTE by assignment category, I'm on the state's website, and when it talks about gen ed teachers, Groton is at 62.8%, where the state average is 66.4%. So I think that, letting the council know some of these numbers can be
Yeah,
very
I agree.
helpful. I mean, we are thin already without the tutors.
Yep.
He said what I was thinking.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't get down on the floor anymore.
But again, they could use that against us, too, and that's Dean's point, saying,
We need to be at 50%? Or, I mean, we need to be lower? I don't know. We already are pretty low.
all right, Lauren.
Okay, so performance data, another part of that accountability index, which you can see from the snapshot that was on the first page. Here it is again. That's the accountability index. Next to it is what we call the performance index, which can be confusing, but it's separate. So it's another indicator of that accountability index.
Is the next generation a test?
So the next generation accountability index, that's our score.
That's the total.
That's,
That's our
yep.
total.
That's the grand total.
Yep.
And do you see where we were in 18, 19? I'd love for this year to pop right back up there.
We're gonna get there. We get a lot of great things happening. So the district performance index is looking specifically at, in terms of ELA, all the state assessments around English language arts, okay? Again, it is an indicator, which means it is part of that accountability index, that accountability grade that we're getting, more or less. Same thing, the one next to it, it's the math. So we have English language arts, we have math, and we have science. Those are 3 performance index that count towards our accountability index, our score. In addition to performance, so there's something to be said for performance versus growth. So performance is, I took the assessment, this is where I landed. I am below standard. I exceeded standard. That's performance versus growth, which is how much did I grow as an individual person? How
From
much?
one year to the next.
From one year to the next. So over multiple data points, one individual, what does my growth look like? And so we have that for language arts and math. We don't have it for science because science is spread out. It's only given in 5th grade, in 10th grade, or 8th grade, and then 10th. Thank you. 11th grade. So we don't have that year-to-year growth.
The growth was very disappointing. That's been a focus in every one of our schools, especially the middle school.
Yes.
And really getting kids to understand their targets and teachers to understand the targets and what needs to happen.
Yes.
So that was the most disappointing of this whole report card.
Yeah. Yep, and it's been a focus, the majority of this year is really looking at what individual targets were for each student. Where did they place? Where did they place the year before? How far did they get? So this is a piece that has been a heavy focus for the year and building goals. So what we have on the next page, so our fitness is also an indicator. So how our students are performing on the physical fitness assessment is another piece. It is absolutely another area that we need to improve upon.
Very much like the yardstick, right?
It's-
We were looking
yeah,
at all
it's-
these things.
We are getting
Yeah, we were.
better with it in terms of just even the actual assessment, because there were a lot of inconsistencies. And to be fair, there are a lot of inconsistencies even from the state directive on this assessment. So while we know we need to get better, I'm not sure this is truly an accurate reflection of where our kids are at. And I couldn't tell you one way or another negatively or positively. It's just not an accurate reflection at this point because of the state's guidance, to be quiet. I don't know if I can even say that out loud, but I'm saying it. We need to clean it up. So that's a work in progress. The post-secondary readiness, again, another indicator towards that accountability index. And that post-secondary is really looking at those students, grades 11 and 12, that are performing on AP exams, IB exams, 3 college credits, the ACT. It's looking at that information to determine the readiness and their performance there. The 4-year graduation rate, another indicator that is used to score us. How many of our 9th grade students in that cohort are graduating in 4 years? We are scored on that. We are also scored on the same thing for our 6th-year high-needs students.
Those are my kids. Yeah, those are the ones, those are my students who stayed
The
till 22.
transition academy.
Yep.
So again, it looks at them through the 9th grade snapshot cohort, and it follows them to see, are they graduating within 6 years? And the last thing is our college entrance, another indicator that goes towards that accountability index, and it's specifically looking at how many of our students are going to a 2 or 4-year college. Okay.
The state gathers that data, used to be through a survey, but now I think Ajit had said that they have other mechanisms to collect that data.
So what happens is they go through the National Student Clearinghouse, they gather it from there, and then they take the students in our district and what's in the National Student Clearinghouse, and they basically like do a match to get that information. Wow. So, it's relatively accurate. It also tracks their persistent, like who's staying. So kids who are entering 2 and 4 years, but how many are actually following through and graduating 2 to 4 year colleges, which is nice. That's a new piece to it.
Well, this wasn't a happy page at all.
I'm sorry.
I said this wasn't a happy page.
No, it needs
That's
a lot.
not in my eyes.
No.
Dean, and then Jen, and then Matthew.
The 4-year graduation rate, does that include the high-need students, or does that data set exclude the high-need students? So they're separated out? Okay.
Oh, they are?
I believe so, yeah.
I think they are too.
Okay.
Because if you have students, obviously, if you have students that are bound to be here for 6 years, that skews the 4-year data rate.
But there's not that many that are in the 6-year rate, are there? There's just, it's a smaller population.
It's definitely a smaller population.
I don't know that it's going to have a
Because not
huge
all of the
effect.
students stay until 22. If they meet their goals, they may leave at 20, 21.
So you will have special needs in that four-year population.
Do you have a population at all
Oh,
that's,
definitely, there's special needs who graduate in 4 years. Yep.
do you have, do you just sort of know from when they hit ninth grade, this is going to be a 6-year or a 5-year, or
There-
is,
there are-
it's up in the air?
No,
No,
there
they
are
know.
Until
many
you-
students who we know
Okay.
will stay with us, until at least, 22, and then there's some students who, not all of our students who stay on for secondary transition skills go to the Transition Academy. Some of them work with a company called Sharp Training, and they just get some employability skills in the community, and then we're able to exit them.
Life skills kind of thing.
Are you ever surprised by somebody that you figured would probably be able to, 5 or 6 year track or a longer track, and they actually wind it up after 4 years? Anybody ever do that? Just curious.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it does happen.
Don't know how often that
Yeah.
happens. Okay.
Yeah, some students will say to us, I want my diploma. And that's their choice. They want to leave. They want to get a job. Maybe they've, they already have a job in the community and they want their diploma. So for sure, if that's what they want, that's what we do.
Are they ready to get their diploma?
Well,
I mean-
it's hard for us to tell. I
Yeah.
mean, they certainly have the desire to get a job in the community.
And
or
parents
go
are
to-
involved in
Or
that,
do some
too.
online courses at Three Rivers.
I ask only because, I don't know what it matters anymore these days, but theoretically, my high school diploma weighs the same as your high school diploma. But if somebody else has gone through 4 years and said, well, I want my diploma, but they actually have not, for lack of a better way to phrase it, accomplished what I have, they would have needed 6 years, but they don't want to wait 6 years, but they get a high school diploma. You see where I'm going with this? So their diploma is not exactly like my diploma.
Well,
They needed more time.
In order for them to have received transition services after 4 years, they have to have achieved all of their credits for graduation. So they've achieved the same credits as students who graduate in 4 years.
So it's, again, awkwardly phrased, it's a legit high school diploma, if you will.
Yes, they're just
Oh,
staying
okay.
on for transition services.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure when they say,
Good question, though.
because otherwise, they say, well, I'd like my diploma. Well, I'd like my diploma too,
Yeah.
No, they've earned all their credits.
They've earned it,
Yeah,
okay,
they've earned
good.
them.
That's what I want to know.
And I do want to check, I want to make sure I gave you accurate information on whether or not it's one cohort and then split out or two separate cohorts. So if you don't mind, I'll get back to you on
Sure.
the 4-year versus 6-year. I just want to make sure that I'm telling you the accurate.
Thank you.
Jen?
I have two questions. So first, the college one, at 75%, that's not necessarily a bad thing because in our area, there are students who are entering like the trades and stuff, and not everyone is college bound, so we do have other opportunities here that maybe not be available in other parts of the state. And second, my question is on growth. I know you mentioned how that's perceived, but would you mind reiterating that so I can better understand where the target is 100% and you're saying that we're at 50, like on average, like 50 to 70?
It's not a percent, right?
Well, for targeted is,
Okay.
so what that's saying is, the goal is that every child will achieve 100% of their target, meaning I'm a 4th grader, and this is how I performed on the SBAC my 4th grade year. I'm given a trajectory of like where I should be by the end of my 5th grade year.
Okay.
Because the goal is, we want to get to a certain place so that we're not creating gaps in our education, right?
Okay.
So in order not to do that, we want to make sure we're hitting that target. We're making enough growth to not,
To stay on that line.
to stay on that line.
Okay. So this is the line, and if they're here, okay, perfect, thank you.
But we do get credit for if we don't get to the 100% of the
Yep.
growth target, we might get 75%, or we might even go over the growth target a little bit.
So it looks at two different pieces, and I'm not sure it's appropriate to go into deep tonight with it, but there are two different pieces to growth that the state looks at. It looks at, did you hit your target? And then how close did you get to the target?
Okay,
If that makes sense.
Or did you go over?
Or did you go over it? Yeah.
thank you.
Matthew?
Two things. With the fitness standards, I'm wondering if Mr. Romano could come in and help us elucidate this. I'm wondering, I'm ignorant. I'm wondering what we place a lot of emphasis on our team sports, and we place some emphasis on intramural sports. Does this tell us we need to place more emphasis on one or the other? I don't want to prejudge anything, but I think that would be, he could perhaps help us
It definitely
understand.
would be interesting to get a follow-up on that, and even the assessment and how the PE department prepares kids too, and does the assessment.
Because I don't
Those are all
think,
good questions.
I don't think he'd be happy with the slope of this line.
But I believe
You're gonna
that's
have some
determined by,
Teachers come.
there's
That's
a,
what I mean.
Yeah.
there's a goal set by age, right? And by sex on push-ups,
Sit-ups.
sit-ups,
Flexibility.
flexibility, and then a mile
And stamina.
run.
I could do all that.
Well, as long as they're willing to wait 30 minutes from me, I can do that. There's one other thing about the graduation rates, and I think that I don't know the answer. I'm wondering how we view the graduation rates in the context of our military population's transiency, how that affects our graduation rates.
Well,
I think
years
that's
ago, the
something we have to-
military kids did quite well.
Military kids have done well, but I have to get back to you on that. We'd
Yeah.
have to like.
Well, even
do a
if they do
closer
well,
analysis.
when we say that somebody's graduating in 4 years or 6 years, how do we know this if somebody leaves after their junior year?
We don't.
We don't.
Right.
Okay.
No, they come and go.
So-
Not just military, but, you know,
Yeah.
transient.
But they may, what I'm wondering is whether they're statistically counted as not having graduated because they weren't here at the end.
No, but we'll have a smaller talent pool to be able to compare.
Okay.
Because you have people coming and going at different times.
That's all.
So if they're coming from within the state, my understanding is if they are a first-time ninth grader, they're part of that particular year they went into ninth grade, they become part of that cohort. And regardless
In
of
the
whether.
state, but if
in
it's
the
out of state, that's a
Out of
different
state,
issue.
I would have to look into, I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't think they can keep
Because
track
of
of
the
that.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian?
Yes, to follow up on that, when you're talking about cohorts, and I'm looking at the year labels here, these are labeled for this is the freshman year we're looking at? Or is this their graduation year?
That's their graduation year.
This is the graduation year, so they started 4 years prior to this? Okay, thank you. Also, the post-secondary readiness versus the college entrance. When you were describing post-secondary readiness, it sounded a lot like college readiness. And what's the difference between the two calculations, I guess? What does post-secondary mean in the state's perspective?
So post-secondary readiness means that I'm an 11th or 12th grader and I'm taking classes that are preparing me for like some post-secondary institution.
Education wise, okay.
Yep. So as an example, it could be my performance on SAT, it could be my performance on an AP exam, those types of things.
Okay.
So that's looking at readiness versus college entrance, how many kids actually entered a 2 or 4 year college.
Right. So, yeah, to build off of what Jen was saying earlier, I think there is, for the CSDE to take a look at, there is something missing here. And that's for the career track individuals who are, maybe they have a vocation in mind and they're training for it, and they're going to segue into that. How do we capture that data? Because that also should be considered a successful outcome to high school
So,
education.
I'll give you a little piece of it. We've gone to the Department of Defense. I've gone to Congressman Courtney. I've been saying for 5 years that we have so many kids who enlist and they're not getting credit in the state for readiness, for career readiness. This is, and actually, as you know, that there's a lot of education that goes into even enlistment and, and degrees that they accomplish because of that. So it's been kind of in limbo. I know Ajit came last year to talk to us, who is in charge of data, and it's just a matter of having the State Department be able to collect the data from DOD and do that matching thing for our students who've enlisted and make sure that it's validated. And so we continue to talk about it at our superintendent military liaison meeting, and And it's one of those things I'm going to find out before I retire.
And we did,
Or make sure those kids get credit.
Is there a way that we can do it as a district?
Well,
Susan did initiate that with
did.
the Department of Defense and the Connecticut State Department of Ed, bringing them together. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, that there's still a lot of red tape between the
There
class,
is.
like classified
Right.
information that they just can't seem to come
I mean,
together.
I even said if they get their, their paperwork saying that they've enlisted,
Right.
is that going to be enough? Can we put that in Power School somehow? But that wasn't enough. They needed to get the validation from Department of Defense that they are then enlisting. And actually
And that's where
enlist.
it comes to a halt. It's-
And that's,
right?
but we haven't ended this. We will continue this. And if we need to write a letter maybe from the Board of Ed or something, maybe we'll do something like that.
And it's understandable too, because, you have, I mean, just looking at the enlistment thing, that, it's complicated. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy at all.
Right.
Because enlisting is one thing, but then there's boot
Serving.
camp, and there's graduation from boot camp, and then there's like, successful first year
Right.
through the service. All those things are different areas where there can be a lot of drop-off, right? For someone who's not fully committed or,
Very similar to college, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To continue through.
right. And also, and then in the vocational side of things, that's incredibly hard to track, because then you're talking private sector jobs. But that, again, a successful outcome to high school education, someone could go join a contracting firm, and learn a lot of carpentry or electrical, just do it on the job, just
Get
because
an
they didn't go to Grouse.
internship at Electric Boat.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
One other thing, just kind of recapping, I was just looking at all the graphs that have the little indicator of being part of the accountability. Not to be too detail-oriented, but I counted 15. And I was wondering if maybe some of the DPIs were combined in the final score.
Possibly.
And I also, like, one of these graphs is a duplicate to the overall, so maybe we could the Next Generation Accountability Index graph is the exact same data that we saw on the
First line.
page.
slide, so.
Yeah, she noted that, and then I did notice, though, that graph also has that little symbol next to it, so that's,
Right, it's like a,
doesn't count for itself.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, so that brings us down to 14.
So we got it down to 14.
But I could see the DPI for math, science, and English maybe being combined, into one aggregate, if that's a thing, but, I don't know. That's, more of a detail-oriented question, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions?
It's gonna take long.
Last chance.
We'll find that list of the 12.
Don't you?
Adrian, last chance for questions, please.
We want to show you how to get
You wanna
on,
just go through
play around in the
Then you can
sandbox.
search for your number.
Ian, last question.
I'm good, yeah, and that was mostly just kind of a trivial. I'm sure, like, it's something like that, where they just combine.
She'll figure it out.
Don't you-
Guarantee you she'll figure it out.
It's going to drive her crazy.
It'll make me crazy, yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, so this is how you can access the website. It's public. You can go to public ed site. You can literally Google CSDE report card, and it will bring you right to the page where you can choose whatever district you'd like to look at. In a lot of cases, it can't even give you like a side-by-side of our district and a different district. So I encourage you to go there. The live side allows you to interact with it a little more. If you hover over certain aspects, it'll give you the actual number or count versus a percentage, as an example. So I do encourage you to go to that, especially, if you're curious and you're still trying to learn the ins and outs, as a new board, as part of the district. And I'm happy to sit with whoever would like or needs to kind of talk through some of this. And this is just our jumping off point to beginning to collect all of our data for this current school year, which will start.
And I think I've sent this out electronically, so those are live links too.
So yeah, you can access the website right from the
All
board.
right, Jen?
Good job.
Do we have this, shame on me for not seeing it on our Groton Public Schools site? Because as families transition into our district, maybe we don't put an interactive one, but we come up with the charts to show how we compare to like all of the things that Ian and Adrian had mentioned. How do we compare to our peers? How do we compare to neighboring towns? It's just so that we give them a well-informed, site that they can go to.
I see a web page in our future. I know that all of this comprehensive data is on the board side when we've done presentations, but I can see what you're saying, taking a closer look at Groton's data.
Yeah.
And maybe being able to put several of those presentations that we've already done up and then really orient people to the site so that they can see for themselves as well.
Yeah, because there are some good stories, there's good, there's bad, just informed.
Right.
This was Kim's referral that we prepare a communication piece. This was Kim's referral that we prepared a communication piece on helping attract people to Groton, and this was precisely the sort of data we were talking about. So, when you guys get a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have something like that on the Realtor website for Fitch High School, and our score is not that good compared to other
Yeah.
districts.
I reiterate my earlier point.
How it can be used for you and against you.
Anything else? Well, thank you, Lauren,
Thank you,
Ben.
all of
Denise, are you leaving or you staying?
I don't know, am I leaving or staying?
We have just the literacy
I
discussion.
think I'll leave.
You leave? Well, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. I guess I could speak for the board that we learned a lot.
Yes.
And we'd like you to come back. I know Adrian would love you to come back so we could talk. Like Ian says, dive into the weeds a little bit. Right? I heard you say that, Ian. All right, well, thank
all.
you.
Appreciate it.
Have a safe trip home.
Yep.
Thank you, we will. Have a good evening.
Denise, don't act so happy to leave.
Right? She's at least a little upset. A little spring in her step. I haven't seen that all day.
She said I know because she's on our literacy team.
All right. Next on the agenda, does anybody need a break? You good? Okay. All right, next on the agenda is the K-5 literacy update. Thank you for coming.
Sure, my pleasure. Phil, do you want to start? You want me to
Yeah,
start?
I asked Mr. Hernandez-Corcoran to join us, of course, anytime we're talking literacy. She's the person we want at the table. But really, all we wanted to do is sort of provide an overview of, give you an update on our work with the Hill for literacy, which we spoke about at a previous board meeting. They're helping us review the resources that we have for the different literacy programs that we're thinking of bringing here to Groton. I'm just going to share the website again. It's just very simple, hillforliteracy.org, if you want to explore this on your own. But just to summarize what we've said before, the purpose of this organization, and this was a free program that Lisa sort of applied to and was able to get accepted to work with them, so it cost us nothing. And they're really guiding, their purpose is to guide educators through the process of creating schools that excel in developing students' language and literacy skills. So one of the ways to do this is by supporting us with reviewing potential core ELA curricular resources. Right, the curriculum review process is different from piloting. Again, we went over this at a previous meeting. Piloting, aside from being expensive to purchase all the resources, can be very disruptive to class procedures and routines. So we took this route instead. This allows teachers to really dive into the curricular resources and truly understand the content. This is done with a tool developed by the Hill for literacy. Our curriculum review committee is composed of K-5 teachers, interventionists, and administrators. We have divided into groups with 3 different lenses to review the first curricular resource, Wit and Wisdom, as part of a compendium. Our first meeting, we were with the representative for a couple hours. She gave us an overview of the system, the process, and the review tool that each team would be using. We divided our group, how many do we have, 30 approximately?
About 30, yeah.
So into 3 groups, and each group had different areas to look at. For instance, one group was examining the resources for phonological awareness, phonics, and culturally responsive and sustaining education. The second group looked at fluency, vocabulary, motivation and engagement, listening and speaking. And then the third, instructional design, comprehension, assessment, and writing. The process they outlined for us for each curricular resource is 10 hours, and they were not joking.
Yeah, no, they weren't kidding at all.
We have completed the first resource evaluation, Wit and Wisdom. We had 2 different days, 2 full days, so it did take the full 10 hours. This morning, we met with representatives from the Hill. We sort of reviewed not necessarily our findings, but she just wanted to know how the process went, some questions that came up. And the great thing about this is not only are we evaluating the curriculum as we're going along, but we're developing a series of questions that we have for the publishers of those curriculums. So we are going to have, after we review both, we're going to have dedicated meetings with the publishers so we can hopefully give our questions ahead of time to them so they can show up and answer our questions to give us a better understanding of something that, our questions could be based around an aspect of the review that we didn't see, or something that we saw a deficiency in that we want to know how they're going to, if they're in the process of updating it or meeting, raising their expectations for that. So we are about to we're going to start our first meeting on the next one later this week. And I think if the timeline works, we'll be able to really provide a nice update for our curriculum committee. Because if our next meeting is going to be that first Monday in May.
Yeah, the second date is a week from today, is the second day for the review. We start on Thursday.
So we're doing Thursday and a Monday?
Monday, I believe.
Okay. So we'll be able to do that for our curriculum committee, and then, of course, bring it to the board after that. I know I said a lot here about the process, but is there anything you wanted to add?
The only thing I will add is that we've had great, really great conversations with our teachers. They have found it a really wonderfully in-depth experience getting into the resources deeper than they've gotten into resources in the past. I mean, this has actually required us to read through K-5 manuals with different lenses. So when we talk about it being 10 hours, by the end of the day, trust me when I tell you, everything hurts. Your brain hurts, your eyes hurt, everything hurts. Because it really is, it's really a commitment to thinking about our kids and making sure that what we're looking at is going to meet those needs. So I can't say enough about the curriculum committee that we have. I mean, these people that have agreed to be part of this are the reason why we all come to work every day in Groton. They're why. They are giving it their all to make sure that what we select to move forward is for our kids.
And the feedback from them has been great. After we completed this first cycle, I reached out just to get some feedback, and a lot of the comments are about the thoroughness of the process, which is hard to ignore. But they love looking at it from all the different perspectives. They feel honored to be part of the process, that they were chosen by their principals to be part of that. And again, they talk about the comprehensiveness of it, extremely detailed. It's good to have all parties working together. And they like working in groups. It allows dialogue and discussions while assessing the resources. So the feedback has been great. People, like Lisa said, I think the conversations we've been a part of in our groups has been outstanding in terms of what they're looking for. And what was even great is by the second day, they were sort of like, hey, can I take this? I might want to look through it over. They took it over vacation, mind you, because our last session was the Thursday before break, and they're like, oh, I might want to use this. I might put this activity in front of my kids and see how they respond to it. So that does give us a little, it'll be interesting to touch base with them on Thursday to see who's had a chance to do that and how their students reacted. So.
Dr.
Not that I'm a masochist, but I really like the idea of hurting. would it be appropriate to have one of the committee, our committee on it? I guess I'm asking for myself. I would love to sit in on one of those. Would that be appropriate?
From what the conversation we had with the Hill representative is that it tends to be an opportunity for the teachers and the admin to look at the curriculum without outside pressure. So I would, and I'm just going to be frank,
Yes.
I would absolutely sit with you myself and talk about everything that we're doing.
That would be fabulous.
I will absolutely do that. We could do a Zoom call
Even
at
with
any
the
point in
committees,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
With the committee as well.
That would
But
be
I just
great.
feel in the,
It would come to the committee.
well, no, I feel like the work that we're doing though during the committee really should be the committee.
No, I think she's talking about the curriculum, the
Oh,
Board
no,
of
no,
Ed.
oh, yes, yes. We've
There's so
got
many committees,
different
so many
right now. But yes, with the curriculum committee, we could absolutely go in depth.
And from my understanding, because I have not gotten knee-deep, I really want my staff, I totally trust my staff in this work, and I stay out of it like I do other things too, until they need me.
Yeah.
And so I will
Well,
probably
that's
come
why
in
I asked the question.
at the
Yeah.
end.
Thank you for asking.
I just really think I want them to be knee-deep in this work and to really give us true, honest feedback. But they really aren't going to be making any decisions till they go through this whole process with the next group. And then they have a system of taking them through so that there aren't biases and they can really figure out what's going to be the best fit for our kids. And like I say, with anything, no program is going to be picture perfect. Now, do we have to do a program or a curriculum with fidelity? Yes. But there might be things that need some adjustment, Maybe there's a text set that we need to include because it's more culturally responsive. So we're just going to have to really go with this Hill and their direction to take us through this process so that we do it the right way, I think.
As I said, that's why I asked the question, but I love your answer, that you'll come to our committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Ackerman, your microphone is muted.
Oh, no.
Oh, that
She
was
had
a
such
good
pearls of
question,
wisdom.
That was really good.
All right.
I just want everybody to know that I am not a masochist.
Adrian, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. So it's with the curriculum committee now and you're reviewing programs. When are the teaching staff that will be using the programs going to have a chance to look at, review, maybe try a few things and comment on
The teachers are on it.
all of the teachers? So
That's
all
who-
of the-
Right, so we've got 30 people that are a combination of teachers, special education, literacy specialists, admin.
all grade
So across all grade levels.
So they're bringing back resources
So a
to their
sampling of the
colleagues.
teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every
Not-
teacher.
Yes.
So what percentage of I don't know how many teachers are in.
How many
K-5, but-
teachers compared to
So-
administrators?
Oh, way more teachers than administrators. I think we have 2 representatives per building. For teachers, we have
But also 2 per grade level.
and 2 per grade level. And then
That's 12.
we've got 2 special education teachers. We've got 5 literacy specialists, 3 admin, and I feel like I'm missing someone.
When you and I.
Oh, yeah, us. And the 2 of us. Yeah, so they are. The nice thing about it also is because so many people on the curriculum committee have wanted to take the manuals back, we've been encouraging them to go ahead and show your colleagues. Have your colleagues take a peek at it. As well as the fact that all of the resources for example, for Wit and Wisdom, we had access to. There are some
Digitally,
teachers
right?
digitally to the curriculum. There are teachers who have been sharing that with their colleagues as well, so they could take a look at it as well. So it's not like it's staying landlocked just with the 30 of us, but it's the 30 of us that are doing that really, really deep dive in.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering, before because lots of teachers are just going to be told, there's a new curriculum and this is what you're teaching. Are we getting comments from the group as a whole in taking those into account, on a more formal level?
As in all the elementary teachers across the district?
To some extent, yes.
I
mean,
think that
obviously
might be,
you're-
I get it.
If you have 200 teachers, then you're going to have 200 different ideas, but Like, like, as a district, are they gonna say, we're thinking of going with this or this? Who else would like to look at them and weigh in? I mean, obviously, some teachers may just not want to get involved and will teach whatever, but maybe some others would rather have.
I think what's going to be important to do is when the committee makes that final decision, it's to identify what the strengths of this program is, knowing full well, like we've said before, no program's going to be perfect and have everything, but acknowledging those areas that might not be where we want it to be, and then discussing how we're going to manage those deficiencies, or, you know, whatever we want to call them. That's what we want to work with the publisher, whoever we end up choosing. And I think that's going to be the broader discussion, where, hey, we chose this, we love it for these 15 reasons. There's 5 areas here that we're not thrilled about, but we're going to continue to work. We'll work over the course of the first year to sort of figure out how we're going to fill those gaps. I don't think we're going to have the time to sort of say, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. Is that okay with you, type thing, to all the teachers? Some are, you know, I think the district's aware of the process that we're going through, and they're kind of excited to hear what decision we make. So we'll have to figure that out, how we're going to get that information out to the greater population, and then how we're going to answer those questions that come along with it. I mean, it's going to be a year-long, whatever direction we go in, it's going to be an ongoing review process all next year, getting that feedback from everyone, from students, from parents, and really evaluating it throughout the year, in my opinion. I mean, it's not just about choosing the program, it's about how we're going to maintain it and what improvements we can make, and are we seeing its effectiveness as the year goes on.
So,
There's a lot to
so
it.
you're going to like take a year to see if you like this program?
Well, I think whatever direction we go in, we choose the program, we implement it, we come up with an implementation plan,
Which
and
is a
then we,
lot of professional learning.
right, so it'll be a ton of professional learning as well as reflection and evaluation.
Right.
Because,
And get
right, if
feedback
we're
from
seeing too many, if we choose it and then throughout the year, you know, it's an absolute disaster, we're not going to stick with it, right? So we have to have that constant evaluation of the program. I think we're going to be in a good place to start, and then it's going to be about building and seeing how do we fill those holes that we identify.
So are you thinking implementation is 25, 26 school year, or?
September.
Oh, this September.
This September.
Okay, perfect. Because
Yeah.
when you said evaluating for a year, I was thinking like, okay, not this coming school year, so that's.
No, not evaluating to choose, but evaluating to make the program the best it could be.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping the program will be successful, that we don't have to start all over again.
No, we don't want
That
to do
would be
that
a-
either.
No.
And that's why
Disaster.
we've gone with the Hill, because they really have a valid process and, you know, have done this with many, many other districts and had real success with it. So we're, you know, very confident that it's a viable process. And we do feel like we've got a terrific team
Yeah.
of real expertise that I trust are going to, you know, really try to make the best decision.
Ms. Corcoran or Phil,
Matt.
do we have any feedback from districts that have adopted this program as to how satisfied they were?
Yes, so one of the districts we visited was Shelton, and there was an article that was published, I think it was a couple of months ago, about how they have actually, since their adoption of Wit and Wisdom, their test scores have gone up continuously for 3 years in ELA. When we spoke, we actually went to Shelton. They opened their doors. The generosity of time was beautiful. Teachers demoed lessons. We got to speak with the admin. We got to see all the resources. What they did say about Wit and Wisdom was that year one, there were lots of tears and lots of swearing, because it's hard. It's hard to move to a brand-new curricular resource, but they provided so much professional learning for their teachers and time for them to really get to know the curriculum, that the second year, it was better. And now that they're in their third year, they love it. They love it, the kids love it, they love the text, they love the learning, They love the ability to have, they have a push-in model there. So their special education teachers join during the lessons. So after the direct instruction, kids are doing an activity, the teacher's got a group, the special education teacher has a group. They just have a really great process, and they've unpacked it really, really well. So their feedback was tremendous.
And there's a lot of other districts near us. I think Waterford is one, so really networking with others. You know, I do it at the superintendent level, you do it at the assistant. We do it with directors of curriculum, so that it's really good to hear what other people are going through and seeing and experiencing.
When would we start?
Go ahead.
When would we start professional? Once we choose a program, and it's going to be implemented in September, will we have enough time to get the first real push of professional development beforehand?
And how are you going to do it all year long?
Yeah. So I'd like to mirror what we did for our UFly Foundation's phonics curriculum. So what we did with that was we met before the school year was out. I met with every grade level team at their buildings, and we discussed the curriculum. We discussed like broad strokes overview, right? So here's a little bit about the methodology, here's a little bit about the how and the what it will look like. If you'd like to do a little bit of reading over the summer, which a lot of teachers have asked, they would love to be able to have something even digitally so that they can look at over the summer. So that would be a great way for us to kind of launch us into using this new resource. So that would begin this year. That's my hope. Then it would be something that we would need to really focus on for the entire year next year. The few days that we have before the school year starts would need to be devoted to unpacking Unit 1 and helping all of our K through 5 teachers understand that. We would also need our professional learning time, our PLC times for ELA, to be unit planning. We would need our literacy coaches, which go in and co-teach, to do demoing with teachers, to do some side-by-side teaching. We would need to look at our data throughout the year to think a little bit about how is this landing, what tweaks do we need to make, what are next steps. So in essence, all of next year, the professional development, be it the days that we don't have school or professional learning community time during school, is going to be
And TLI.
devoted to understanding our new resource.
So the professional development and the, I can't think of the word, and you putting out this new curriculum is going to be at the same time? I mean, they didn't have professional development this year, and then the curriculum starts. So they're going to be having professional development and using the curriculum at the same time.
So what we're gonna do is, it's like a year zero. It's a launching year. It won't be a year where we are going to be expecting teachers to be following very strict scope and sequence in terms of getting all the units in. It's going to be a learning year.
So how is that going to affect the students, though? When the teachers are having a learning year on the curriculum?
So what I
what's the
will
impact on the
say,
students?
that, I'm just gonna say, it's going to be even better than what we currently have as a resource, because the teachers are asking for it. The teachers have been asking for something that is far more explicit, far more systematic. So just like we did with UFly, it's the same exact thing. We
And they
set
really
them up.
took to it quite well.
They took to it really well. We set them up, we set the course in June, right? And then from the beginning of the year, that has been our focus. So we'll follow the same path and allow teachers to really get to know this resource well with all of our support.
And if it is like UFly and Hagerty, they're going to be seeing the success in their students, which really inspires them and to continue on, you know, and seeing results.
Will we see this success at the end of next year, or will it be
That's
the
what we're
following
planning
year?
on. We're going to see some success, yeah, because we're going to monitor throughout the year 3 times with the Dibbles for K through 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, E.
Yeah, so just to be clear, on the timeline of selection, the wit and wisdom, That's the curriculum we're looking at, or the package we're looking at right now?
That's the resource that we just finished looking at, and then
Okay.
we're moving into another resource.
What's the timeline for selection?
The timeline, I think, was it May?
Yeah, because we're going to finish, I'm just bringing up my calendar. We'll have this review done by the 23rd,
Yes.
right? And then we have a meeting with the Hill for when do we meet with them again?
I don't know the exact dates, but we did want to try to get as much in before SBAC as possible, so that our 3 through 5 teachers that are on the committee wouldn't have so much to think about. So our goal was to review 2 of the resources, but then we do have follow-up meetings. We have roundtables with the publisher. I believe, if Phil is looking at it, I think it was some point in May.
May 13th is the meeting with the Hill from 9 to 11. So I believe
And
that's the time with,
building admin as well.
that's with the building, and is that with the publisher as well?
No.
No, will that happen already?
That would have already happened.
Okay.
So May 13th, and the Hill also supports us once we've made a decision in suggestions for rolling out and unpacking a new
So
resource.
The Hill's acting as a consultant.
Yes.
Essentially, and a
Yes.
guide for.
Facilitator.
Yes.
Right.
Facilitator. Okay.
Yeah.
With the State Department, I think they were aligned with the State Department.
The grant came from the state, so that's where it came from in terms of funding, and the state is, we do have a state representative that joins on Zoom calls
Okay.
as well.
That's good to hear. Just so be clear, May 13th is the day that the selection is going to be made, or is that going to happen later?
I think there's the
Yeah,
discussion.
let me get that date to you,
Yeah.
because I don't want to, misspeak, because then I see a meeting on the 24th, and it looks like a results meeting, so I don't know if that's the final date.
Okay.
I'd have to look deeper as to,
Into the timeline.
into the timeline, yeah.
We'll let you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Andrea?
You can tell, okay, I'm not a masochist, but am I nuts? Now, we're supposed, the Board of Ed is supposed to not agree, but to approve, thank you, to approve this curriculum, yet we have not been a part of any of the presentations. We don't know anything about it at all, and yet it's going to come to us to approve. Help me understand that, because I don't.
Well, I think what's going to happen is, we're going to give you a summary of what we've done so far at the May meeting, which we just spoke about having Lisa come, and by that time, we would have completed both reviews. And then I believe when we make a decision as a group, we'd be able to come before the curriculum committee again on June the 3rd, which we're talking, that again, as our, maybe the follow-up meeting with the curriculum committee, to say, this is the direction we want to go, and this is why. So you'll have the information on the 2 programs in May, and then after we have a chance to meet with the people from the Hill for Literacy and our district elementary leaders, and we come to a conclusion as to where we want to go, then we come to you on that first Monday in June and say, this is the direction we want to go, and this is why, and move forward from there.
Okay, I understand that. I still think that it's not the best way to go in terms of students and in terms of our understanding. I think if we had been part of, even though you may want to, and I agree that at times the Board of Ed can be a heavy presence in the room. However, if our charge is to approve it, we should have been able to listen in the beginning, and then listen to the rationale of the teachers and the committee after that. That's where
And I'll just say, we'll try to provide you with all the detail that we think you will need to see our reasoning either way, one way or the other.
Okay, but did you hear my concern? That's my,
Heard.
yep.
Jen? Jen, then Adrian and Matthew.
Two things. Two things. I know Adrian in one of our meetings mentioned that there was one vendor you were sort of recommending in addition to the ones
The
that
the
was
one in
brought
Stonington, Adrian?
on the plate. I'm not sure.
That was a full program, Wonders, and I wasn't necessarily recommending it, I was just referring to it as
Like another option. Okay.
option, but there's lots that goes into that.
Okay, yeah, and then, so second, just going back to the role that we play, and I hear your concern about not being involved, but we need to trust the staff that they're making the best.
I absolutely agree. However, my concern is in the process, not necessarily in trust. I trust our teachers implicitly. I was a principal, I was a teacher, I understand that. And I support that and I agree with that. But if we're to be part of the process, we should have been in the beginning.
Matthew?
Okay. These, Wit and Wisdom is the product of Company A, and EL Education, which you still have to do, is the product of Company B. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know if the curriculum committee would invite us, the rest of the board, to sit in as silent observers to your committee meeting when the presentation is done. I would find that very helpful.
Oh, you're always welcome to sit in on another committee's meeting.
Yeah.
And they're all virtual too, so
Yeah.
for your convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I would kind of like to echo Dr. Ackerman's concerns about the board's oversight on this. So there is a policy on this, and it doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like we're following the policy. I believe I brought this up about a month ago in the meeting to ask how the policy was going to be followed, and now it seems like we're a month closer to a decision that's only a few months away. So I would like to see some kind of an outline of how we're going to follow that policy as best possible, like a written down outline with dates. Or if we're just going to not follow that policy, would the board have to vote on that? Or
We're supposed to be following the policy.
I think we can show that on a flow chart, how that works. I mean, anytime we have, typically the teachers go and write the curriculum. So we're looking at really a resource. And then, it's almost like we're looking at the resource first before, and it is kind of a curriculum resource. So it's a package deal, right? So I think it's going to be one of those things that the board goes ahead and in the committee says, go ahead and, write this curriculum or bring forth this curriculum as, and the teachers do that work and then bring it back to the board for their oversight. So I think we're doing it, but in a different way. So you are getting some of the preliminary information. We're going to have more of the teachers doing the legwork on, looking at these resources and then we can bring you back the information. So I think you can chart it out with that flow chart, but just
Yeah, I
as
could
to how
do
this
that
is
for
going.
you.
Yeah.
And I do think it's a little bit different. Now, obviously, I haven't been here before where, a major, a program has been brought in. But to me, I'm not gonna bring something to you that's not worthy of moving forward. So I wouldn't wanna bring Wit and Wisdom to you if we evaluate it and it's
not
junk.
right.
Right.
Then it's not gonna, then we don't wanna do it, so why bring it before the board? What I'm hearing is that, maybe you did wanna be involved in that. I don't know, that would be different for me in that's getting you in on the in the
On the ground.
nitty gritty, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe we can put that on the agenda for our discussion, how the committee itself looks at it, to be discussed in terms of how the board as a whole, or the district as a whole looks at it.
And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all right.
sorry, I'm trying to think of, when a teacher comes and has an idea for a class, they usually come to the curriculum committee and say, hey, I want to teach an EMT class because of A, B, and C. And generally, if the committee says, yeah, that sounds great, we want to offer that, go back and write it. And in this case, it seemed to me that we came to you, but it wasn't, the state came to us and said,
Yeah. Yes.
you need to
Right.
do, to improve your program for literacy. So obviously, as a board, you said, yes, we're going to do that. So go do that. And then we're going
This is
to,
the process we're using.
right. And then it's us coming back to saying, here's our product, here's what we want to give to our kids. And again, giving you all the details, just like a teacher would come back with a curriculum, walk you through the curriculum map, walk you through the pacing guide, and you say, is everything here? Do you have anything? And sometimes you can send it back and say, I have questions here or questions there. I think we're going to allow for that. I mean, I think we need to allow for that where, but we're trying to find all those holes before we even have to bring it to you, I guess is, and then as you review it, as we take you through it and give you all the details through it, if there's still an aspect of the program that we need to look at, then we will. But I think this is a little different because we are under the pressure of timelines and a restriction of,
State mandate.
and a restriction of options based on what the state's,
I don't
recommend.
think in my tenure before, the board was ever involved in writing the curriculum.
no.
Okay.
No. I'm talking about choosing something that we're going to buy for the district.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay. But I think even with that, the school district, well, the administrators and the teachers always made the
Will
choice.
recommend.
And then brought it back to the board. But I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's right or wrong. but
Right.
Share with
that's
the
what
board
it
what
was.
it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I understand what you're saying,
And gives
but this is new.
Yeah,
And-
Yeah, it is.
And we should be looking at how we do it,
Do
do
it.
we change it or not?
right.
Well,
Dean?
can I finish? My question?
I yield.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
This is your last question, Adrian.
He's
And then
very
we go on to
passionate
Dean.
about
30
this
seconds
stuff.
in the clock. Yeah, I am. No, so I'm actually just looking at I'm just looking at the flow chart here. And my concern is that the board has time to look at a curriculum, come up with questions like we did to some extent last time, and then hopefully they're addressed for the next meeting, but so that there's time for a back and forth on that. I mean, so the flow chart is, we propose a curriculum, board subcommittee reviews recommendations, committee of the whole reviews, makes recommendations, write the curriculum reviews again, or the Board of Ed curriculum committee reviews again, then it goes to the board for final approval. So there's just a drawn-out process, I think purposefully, and separately, piloting, so typically the curriculum calls for piloting a program. So should we have the board agree that it's okay to not to buy a program without piloting it? Should we do
That's a good question.
does the board feel that maybe it's a good idea for some experienced teachers to try the program?
They are trying it
That's
right now, though.
typically what piloting is. You don't pilot necessarily across the whole district. You pilot in
In a few
subsets.
classrooms.
Right.
So
Right.
are there classrooms right now where?
People on the
they're
committee have
written-
taken the manuals back,
And they are
and
piloting.
they're trying them out with their kids. They're trying
So
out
they're
lessons
blending
with
it
their
into the
kids.
existing curriculum, or they're actually following?
They're not blending it into the existing curriculum. They're doing the lessons. They're trying out like a week's worth of lessons so that they can see what does it feel like? What is the structure like? So it's not like they're blending it in. So they're taking some time to just try it out, but not an entire unit. Because if you take an entire unit, you're actually disrupting the rest of the flow of what has been taught. So an entire unit, they couldn't just start with unit 4. They couldn't, you couldn't take a wit and wisdom and be like, okay, it's towards the end of the year, I know what the standards are, I'm gonna take unit 4, and I'm gonna pilot unit 4. Can't do that, because we don't have unit 3, unit 2, unit 1, especially in a knowledge-building curriculum, our kids would be completely lost. So what's happening right now is that some of our teachers that are on the committee are taking the manuals for unit 1, and trying out a series of lessons so that they could figure out the structure and the resources to see how it feels and how it flows with their kids.
And to Adrian's point,
Is that true piloting, or is that?
no, to
like,
Adrian's point, the whole point of working with, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's
I
okay.
apologize. The work with the Hill for literacy is in lieu of a pilot. You know, the state the Hill created this process because they realized the time, the disruption, and the cost of a formal pilot. So that's why we got, and that's why we presented our work with the Hill and how we were going to move forward. Now, to your point, there wasn't a vote taken that night. There wasn't, it was sort of a presentation and an agreement, I guess. So you're right. I mean, this has been different for a number of different reasons, just because of, I guess, the fact that it's a mandate.
Well, I don't know
But we
if there's
should-
an agreement. Did we agree on it, or did we just hear the presentation?
It was sorry. My understanding is it was a presentation with some questions.
Right, that's what I thought. Maybe it needs
so-
to be on
But that's
an
why
agenda for an agreement.
That's why I asked for the timeline last time, like for some kind of a timeline on how this process was going to work into our
When is your
policy.
next curriculum meeting?
First week of May, first Monday of May.
And maybe we can talk about having one sooner, since we missed, I didn't realize we'd missed two.
And maybe
So
some of the
maybe we should-
teachers can come that are actually using the program. I mean,
Personally, I would love to have a dozen, I'm sorry, I keep jumping in here. I would love to have like lots of teacher comments saying, we tried it for a week, or we took it home and read it, and we think this is positive about it, and this maybe, could be improved upon, or something like that. But I love to hear just like the boots on the ground review of things.
I think you have to go through the full process. You can't just analyze what
But we
they've
could
seen
see.
so far. They have to go through both to be, this process is succinct and it's really validated, and so they need to go through the whole process before they make any determinations for you to get that feedback. But you can see what they've said about both once they've done this whole process. So-
But we can on Thursday, when we meet with them, like I said, some people took it home. This was the Thursday before break.
Yep.
So obviously, they didn't do anything on Friday. But if they did do something this week, if they were able to incorporate something, we can get some feedback from them.
I think the other thing that you're going to notice as well is once we start reviewing the second curricular resource, there are natural comparisons that they're going to be making to the first resource, right? And that's actually one of the things that Stephanie from the Hill was saying. They'll be able to say, for example, curriculum B, the resources are not nearly as teacher-friendly as resource A. Or vice versa. So, yes, we have to, and we will bring teachers together to talk to you about what they're noticing about both. But until there's that comparison between the two, I think it's a little tricky. So that's actually
You only
the
know what you
next
know.
step. And that starts on Thursday.
So I don't want us to, if we overstep our bounds, we're saying to the teachers that we don't trust what you have evaluated. And that's not my purpose. My purpose is for us to, as a committee, the curriculum committee, and as a board, to decide if there are other maybe functions of the board that we want to look at. Are there changes that we want to make? But I don't want to sit and be an arbiter of whether or not we trust our teachers' judgment. That's not, that should never be our purpose.
so, go ahead, Ian.
Just looking at the same page here in the policy document in the website here, it's policy 6141, and there's an addendum to it where it shows timelines of like what has been done, what's the policy is currently for the Board of Ed. And so I can share Adrian's concerns about it not being in order, but I can also hear the counterpoint to that, where it's like, the presentation or the proposal for a change came from outside the district, so to speak, came from the state. So I could understand being a little out of order on this, but, to Andrea's point, we do have a responsibility as a board to follow a consistent procedure. And it's not so much overstepping, in my opinion. It's more about just vetting and being able to have more eyes on it. And what we offer as a board is a diverse tapestry of perspectives. So as the teachers and the administration present the curriculum to us through this process, I think there's a natural offshoot of that, a natural development where, we ask questions, and having the administrators and the teachers be able to explain the questions and concerns that we may have as, not boots on the ground, we're kind of overview, right? So I think it's just a sort of a good checks and balance. So I'm just trying to get a sense, when I was asking about the timeline tonight, I was just trying to get a sense of where we are in this process from your perspective, and how do we get in line with this as quickly as possible? Now, I understand we're looking at wit and wisdom, and then EL is coming up next. And those are the only two that we're vetting this way?
Unless, for some reason, the teachers say neither A or B,
Okay.
then I just
We
had
just
that, I
asked
asked
that
that this
question.
morning. Like, what if? Then we would find a third.
Are the same teachers looking at wit and wisdom,
Yes,
looking at EL?
yes, the
Oh,
same
okay.
one.
Same group.
And the
Same group,
same
okay.
lenses.
And the
so
same
if
ones
you
trying it out.
looked-
Okay.
Yeah, so if you looked with the lens of phonics, phonological awareness, and culturally responsive, you'll be doing the same exact lens with the next curriculum, so that you can compare the two.
So just to kind of follow up, from your perspectives, this six-step process, number one is presented to the superintendent or assistant superintendent for approval. And then number two is presented to the Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee for review and recommendations. Are we in between 1 and 2 right now? would you say?
That step with the curriculum committee never happened. We haven't really met. So most of that has occurred with the full board. All the informational stuff, right, I think I'm speaking correctly, right? Has been with the full board and not with the curriculum committee. For a number of reasons, we haven't met, there's been a couple, we didn't have a quorum at one point. Somebody was sick, and things happen.
Right.
But the process can't stop.
Yeah.
It's just
And this is
let me take
something
the time, I will do a little overlap of where we are, what we have left, and the process.
Okay.
That's what you're asking for.
Yeah, basically, it's like, where are we
That's what-
going to drop in on this timeline?
Right.
Yep.
Because
I
obviously
haven't even
something
dropped
is.
in yet, so,
Well,
I'm not, I'm really trusting this to
And knowing when our
go
meetings
through
are going
the
to be
full
now,
process.
Right.
at least the last two.
Well, when do
Can help
we have
with
to decide on this curriculum as a board? I mean, what's your timeline? It has to go to Susan, so when do you think it will be going to Susan?
Well, I think I'll probably be
She's
part of
she's part of all the discussions with the Hill for Literacy. Even though she's not taking part in the actual review, she's part of the conference meetings with the Hill for Literacy and the review meeting, in the synopsis meetings.
So will the board have this by May on an agenda? Or are you looking more at June?
Well, I would think that June
Bring you
is,
what we have
I was
at
looking
these
at June.
different times
Yeah.
throughout, but when the final decision is made, then we need to bring that to you to
Right.
showcase what these two had to offer and how that decision came to be.
Or we might have to talk
your target
to the Hill for Literacy about pushing up, some of their meetings are spaced out,
Yep.
and our process will be complete by next Tuesday. So I think we need to talk to them about getting that stuff done.
And all these programs
So that it
do
fits
have a
better.
digital version that's basically free of charge, but there still are the manuals and other resources that need to be
Yeah, the
purchased.
Wit and Wisdom was not free of charge, but we had access to the
So
digital
once
manuals.
the board has made their final approval and decision, then, we can get the resources to the teachers. Would it be wonderful for them to have that over the summer? Not that I'm expecting them to work all summer, but a lot of teachers will want to look at that
Will
before
want
the
it.
first
So are
day
you
of
looking
something.
for the
Yeah.
board to make a decision on this or to vote on this in June? Before the teachers go on vacation, I hope.
Yeah, the hope is before teachers go on vacation.
Okay.
I mean, I do think, I'm just gonna echo what Phil said. I feel like we need to sit down and take a look at the
Timeline again.
and write it out so that everybody knows what and when.
Right, and if you could, to that end, just like refer to the 6 points here in this overview.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And kind of
Lay it out.
calculate, like, plot out for us, like, where are we in this? And understanding that some adjustments had to be made due to the circumstances.
Yeah.
I just want to get a sense of where we are.
Absolutely.
In this process.
Jen?
Yeah, so, I think school year ends like mid-June. So just trying to get back to the timeline, are we gonna vote end of May or end of June?
I think that's why we
what
have
we're
to
gonna do the
figure
timeline.
out, how
It's going to
we
be my
can
task for the next 24 hours.
create a timeline
Yeah,
with a
no,
little
but
more
that'll be
clarity.
Less than.
less than
No, I'm just kidding.
9 AM.
Matthew?
So I'm going to try to draw the lens back a little bit because we've been talking about the particulars of this. There is, in my humble opinion, a dynamic tension within a large organization between an administration that wants to accomplish its goals, that the board fully supports, and the board feeling that to approve anything, we have to own it. And I draw a parallel with the budget. You draw the budget, we look at it, we argue about it, and then we own it. There's a dynamic tension that I hear tonight, and you can tell me if I'm mistaken, that once again, because this has happened on other topics, on other subjects, and there's been some blowback in the board, that on some things, it feels as if we're giving something as a fait accompli that we're asked to give our imprimatur to. And that's tough, because if you don't understand something and you give your imprimatur to it, you own it, and the kids pay the consequences if you don't have enough information. On the other hand, this is state-imposed, and we have to have something in place in September. And so at the end of the day, I am going to completely trust the professional opinion of our team, but I really want you to be sensitive, our leadership, that there is this tension, and we really would like to be engaged earlier in the process on just about everything of great significance. Thank you.
And if I could,
This timeline is, it's hard for us. I mean,
I get it, I get it.
yeah.
but I echo Matthew's concerns, and I have a feeling that Adrian does as well, and, well, actually, the whole board, I would say.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And Dean,
Agreed.
Yeah, Dean.
you gave me your time 10 minutes ago. So, we'd love to hear.
It's all been said.
Not the way you would say it, though, Dean.
Doesn't matter.
It matters to me.
Thank you. It's all right.
You good? You don't want to say anything?
Now you've,
Well, no, there's no use in repeating. I'll just say what everybody else has said is very conventional. I echo your sentiment. That's what I was going to say, yeah.
All right. Anything else? I hope not.
One more thing,
You looking for a motion? You looking
What-
for a motion?
Dr. Ackerman.
one more thing. Motion to.
No.
No, oh, no. Oh, you're just like Kim.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. I can go?
For spending
Appreciate
a
it.
late night
you
with us.
both need to hit the road.
Thank
You both have a ways to go.
Safe travels.
Yeah, you-
I don't have so far to go. You go. Yeah.
I will work on that timeline.
Okay. The next, thank you, Phil.
All right, thank you all.
Have a good night, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Safe travels to you, too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next item is review of the referral sheet. What are you looking at me like that?
Because I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I spoke to the chair a few weeks ago before the last regular meeting. And he said that the last Cal meeting that we had, we talked about the referral for the policy about recording and publishing all committee meetings. And the last Cal meeting, the consensus seemed to be that we wanted to bring that to a regular board meeting for a vote, to take action. When I spoke to the chair before the meeting, he approached me saying that he was not going to put that on the agenda for the last regular meeting, because he was just going to put it there. He was just going to forward the referral to policy. So he's not here tonight. I was hoping he would be, so we get clarification on that. Because here we are now, it's now a month later, and I'm not sure where that referral stands.
I don't know either.
Is it going to policy on the 23rd or not?
But my only concern was, when it has to do with a policy, that affects the school district. It's not like, oh, I want to make a referral that, I don't know, I can't even think now. I don't know. To me, when we're talking about a policy that affects the school district, the board should decide, yes, we want that policy, or no, we don't want the policy. So otherwise, I get to say, Matt, I want your committee to make a policy on artwork. You know what I mean?
Room 11.
And maybe the rest of the board doesn't want to do it. We are a board. We should be agreeing upon what policy we want. It shouldn't be an individual saying, I want a policy on this, and then forwarding it to the policy committee. Like, I misspoke with Adrian when he wants a discussion to have a policy on, what was it, Adrian? I forget.
Family notification of
For
standardized
family
test scores.
Now, that should come to the committee of the whole, a quick discussion. Adrian should say, I'd like to have this policy, blah, 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 blah. Board consensus, do we want to have that policy for our school district, or do we not want to have that policy? It shouldn't be Adrian saying he wants to have this policy, and it goes to the policy committee, and we write up a policy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand perfectly.
May I respond, Bev?
But,
Would you allow me?
sure.
At one of our meetings, I think it was a regular meeting, I shared what I wanted to have the flow be in the policy committee. That if the administration brought something to the policy committee, we would look at it immediately. If there was an existing policy and somebody wanted to perhaps modify it, it could come to the policy committee and we could review it, and of course, bring it back to the full board for their review.
Even with that, Matthew, that should be a decision of the whole board that we want to modify that policy. It shouldn't be you saying, I want to modify this policy, and then the policy committee says, takes it up. It should be a decision of the whole board. We are a board, and the board acts as a board, not as individuals.
That's not what I said, but if that's what the board wants, that's clearly what we'll do. I'm not imposing something. I did bring it to the board and shared this flow with the board, and nobody objected to it. But if there's any concern that you have, clearly, we'll modify it if that's what the board wants to do. The third thing was, if an individual member of the board wanted a policy change and contacted the chair of the policy committee to make a new policy about dogs on campus, whatever, we would bring it, before we would deal with it in the policy committee, we would bring it to the full board to say, it has been suggested that we have a policy on dogs on campus. Is there enough interest in the board for us to take it up?
That's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I know, and I said that to the board. That's what I said to the board.
Because we're a board, we're not a group of individuals. We can only
I
act
did
as
say
a
that to the
board.
board, and I guess I didn't communicate well to you, but I did say that to the board.
And typically, the priorities tend to be the state legislation that comes down to us. It's law. And so it's legal and binding, and we need to create a policy that, speaks to that. And so a lot of times, it's kind of handed to us, and we're seeing it in the Cape journals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there are some of the policies that are still outdated, although this board has done a great job after that report that was done back in 2013, in really making things more current. But there still are some things from the 70s, and when I look at it, they might not even be any different, so there might not be a need for that. But, so it is like, it's almost like a cyclical thing to try to keep it updated. It's really challenging.
So in the minutes that we adopted today, Item number 5 was discussion, Ray, recording of Board of Education meetings. Ian Thomas gave the reason, et cetera, et cetera. The board suggested that the administration should come up with various options for board consideration, and I was going to make a request to the superintendent tonight that we have a report at our next meeting of what their suggestions are for the board to discuss, because it, wasn't scheduled for now. But I mean, we passed it, but that's what it says. The board suggested the administration come up with various options regarding the recording.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of those minutes, but that's not an accurate representation, to my memory, of what was discussed.
Okay.
And to that end also, I am fine with whatever process we choose to do. And I understand we operate as a board. I just put this idea out there for discussion purposes, and I'm asking for support of the board, just so we can explore what a policy would look like. I think what we're looking for from the administration was an estimate on like the time it would take to publish the recordings that are already being made, because most meetings are being recorded through the Zoom links.
By publish, you mean post on the
Post on the YouTube channel.
on the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, maybe someday put a link through to the, minutes on the website, but that's another story.
Well, as soon as we get that information, from my perspective, we're ready to discuss it and move on.
Well, first off, we're in limbo right now because, to Bev's point, like, I walked away from the last Cal meeting last month thinking that we were going to have a discussion and a vote in the regular meeting the week later. I was informed the night of that meeting that it was not going to happen, and that the chair was just going to push it through to policy out of his own discretion. I don't know if that's happened or not, so I was asking,
I have
you as a chair.
I have no further update.
So,
Can I just say what practice is, because I think we're really close to making a decision on this.
mhm,
We are now live streaming every regular meeting,
yeah,
and that can be published instantly. I love this live stream thing. And with Cal meetings, we've always recorded them and published them.
mhm,
I think the only tenor was with committee meetings, and there are some that committee chairs want to have recorded because they need to look back at them and they like to, and sometimes our secretaries are helping us with minutes, so it's very convenient. The part about the publication, it hasn't been consistent, so there's not a consistent practice, and I think we need to have one.
right.
But, is it up to the chair of the committee then to decide? Or is it a board decision? I think that's a discussion that everybody needs to have. We can do it any which way, but we're almost there. Because it's really only the committees that we're talking about that are sometimes done and sometimes not. And it's been more dependent, the practice has been more dependent on what the chair wants.
Right.
What we really need is a consensus. It
Yeah.
needs to go on some agenda, even a Cal agenda.
Yeah.
Do we have a consensus that we want this?
I would
yes or
welcome
no?
that. I welcome that, and I encourage that,
let's
and
go
I was
with
hoping
it.
to have it last week, last month, but it didn't happen. So
Could
here we are
put it
again.
on
So the
the,
time thing isn't even a factor
Yeah.
now that we have the live stream.
Okay,
It only is with the curriculum committees, or the committees. But if there's a staff member on, we can do the recording ourselves. It's not gonna cost us anything, because we're there.
Right.
And we can just,
Right.
so it's really just gonna be what you guys
Yeah,
want.
it's me.
All right.
It's me. I'm the one that wants it because I need to review it right before, I watched the last meeting right before the meeting at 6 o'clock. That's me.
Oh.
Okay.
And you turn, oh,
Piece
I'm
of
sorry.
time.
No, I just, and I appreciate that, and as, someone who's, I'm on one committee, and, but I like to track, like, what's happening all around, and I think, it behooves the board to have that kind of access, and I think it actually, does also benefit the community to understand, like, the nuts and bolts that go into it, as far as a lot of the deliberations that we go through. But, again, yeah, I agree that, it should be the will of the board, if we're gonna make it a policy, it should be something that we all are interested in seeing a policy developed for.
Right.
Right, so I don't dispute that, I'm just trying to.
Just wanna move it
I
along.
just want
Yeah.
a date
Come
and a
on, let's
time
move it
where we can have the
along. It's
discussion,
not that hard.
have the vote, and do the thing,
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think.
Well,
we're really close.
I'll ask Jay
Okay,
about putting it on the agenda for Monday.
okay.
Now,
No?
No, just one thing. So in regards to the policy committee and a comment being made that some of them were from the 70s still, maybe we can say that like every 5 years, and we'll put it in sort of like a stage approach, that all the policies need to get reviewed, and it's just staged, regardless if we're going to make a change, at least it's been reviewed.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
That's fair, yeah.
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 I
You
think
want that
that's
a
kind of
pol-
a way we've been acting on it, but it's not
Yeah,
written down
nobody's
anywhere.
changing the date that
Well,
it was.
we're
Nobody
working
made a
on
policy.
catching up. We're working on
Yeah,
catching
we
up.
are.
Yeah, no, I've seen like really good policy updates, like, just since the beginning, so it's been a
Yeah,
good.
that would make it not overwhelming if you did it every 5 years.
Adrian, could you tell me your referral again? I'm gonna put it on committee of the whole.
All right, yes, I've got 3 of them.
Oh, go for it.
So one would be to see if the board is interested in drafting a policy for family notification of standardized tests and possibly other things of district-wide stuff, but we can work out wording later.
Hold tight now. Wait 1 second.
All right.
Where, you want that to go to policy, or you? how-
No, I
You may
think it
refer
should
to
just
the
go.
It's on the committee of the whole.
Question on a cow to see if 5
It's
people
already
agree
messing up, see
or
that?
whatever.
I'm with you, though. I got you.
Go ahead.
So I like this idea. One, I'd like, it would be, I guess, a cow board review of the CSDE data that we just talked about today, but full review of that data.
Okay.
Sorry, this was the state testing report card?
Yes.
And that's a referral for a cow meeting, full discussion, not for Black Policy.
Yeah, that would
Committee or-
have to, that
That's
would have
cow.
to be a
Okay.
cow, I believe.
Awesome.
Okay.
So, and then another would be our foreign language offerings and any alignment with the foreign language study that was done, or the foreign language survey that was done 2 years ago. Or just discussion of that survey with our current offerings. So that, I guess, would be a COW as well.
Alignment with the survey you're referring to, if I understand,
Foreign
is,
language survey.
is what languages are spoken at home? Is that what you're?
No, it was basically what languages are you in and what languages would you like to take?
Okay.
Because we have some strong alignment with that and some not, I guess, as far as what we're offering, and just some
Okay.
discussion on whether we want to offer more of certain things.
Okay.
What do these dashes stand for, Susan? Like, is that the date? The 7, the 4, the year, and then the dash? What's that?
Those are just the referral numbers.
Oh,
And I think
okay.
it's the year
All right.
and then the number. They usually have people's initials side by side of who made those
We'll put
recommendations.
Adrian's initials. Thank you, Adrian.
Okay, all right, I do have one more. This is the one that I joined the board as my primary goal to talk about, I should say. But just a review of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for ELA in the K to 3 or K to 5 curriculum, I guess.
Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions,
Yeah,
K to 5?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that would go to curriculum directly, but
It
Some-
could go both places.
Yeah,
It could go
somebody else.
curriculum and then it could come to the full board. These are other things that we've done in the past, but it's like trying to catch up, like to really understand it more deeply,
yeah.
so.
One thing, I'll just ask, that foreign language study, so that was it was just a study, and it was talked about in a meeting, and then that was it? There was no discussion on changing anything after that? I wasn't here for that. I watched that meeting about a year ago, but the meeting's no longer up, so.
We can get a hold of that. I'll look into that to find that original survey.
Because I'm
Just
curious
going
to
off
see
of
what
my
the board
memory,
had.
There was a lot of other suggestions about Chinese language, and I think you remember.
Yeah, and that's why we did
Latin
that
was,
study.
you know, there were fewer and fewer number of kids taking Latin, and there's less interest in it in this survey. But I don't want to misspeak, so I'd rather get the survey results and look at it again with you all.
Yeah.
There's a video of it. I'll find it.
I seem to remember you're saying you were going to chat with people at Learn or learn about whether there's possible synergies with other districts to share.
We are talking about that. I think it's
Okay.
actually coming up on Friday.
Okay.
So I will double check with Kate Erickson, who runs Learn.
All right, so where are we with the one-card collaboration?
One-card collaboration, the last mile is the hardest one to do. We're pretty close, but we've got some technical difficulties. Clint has agreed that in May, once he's got the graduation pushed through, that he'll sit down with the people at the library and see, can we do it or can't we do it? We're either going to fish or cut bait.
Okay. I really think, Susan, like, now we have a couple of things on this COW. You should choose one thing to talk about at next COW, unless the list is gonna get longer and longer.
Well, I do want to
Because
add
some
some,
stuff is
too.
still been on since 2023.
Right, and some things we moved over to put on our other chart that goes month to month.
Okay.
So a lot of these things that you're talking about are on the month-to-month chart, but we did it prior to new board members coming on. So
All right.
You can ask
we
about
just
that
need to,
one.
I think, go back to it so that
Okay.
they're feeling like they
Well,
understand.
what do you think we can talk about the next COW meeting?
Can I offer a few more things to that list that she can sort through?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. One thing I would like is a number
I
of
need my
some
jammies.
homeless figures from you, homeless students.
We're getting that data.
Okay, if you could get that to us, I'd appreciate it. The request for recorded meetings, we've dealt with that.
Number of families impacted by this.
Yeah. Update on the health insurance premium payments.
Well, that would go to finance.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I got two phone calls asking why, what's the status of our health insurance premium payments, and I
Yeah,
have no
we
answer to that at all.
To John Burke, but we're down one staff member. We were down two staff members, and so one was coming in over the weekend, so I just have to find.
Well, your update may take 30 seconds then. That'll be fine. Discussion of a
Do you
retreat.
want that to go to finance or to the whole board?
Let's go to the whole board. It'll be very quick. Or send me an email and copy to all of us. Discussion of a retreat to discuss the budget planning process for next year. That's something we need to do, and probably before next November. There's business about how many kids graduate. The other thing I'm looking at is how many school kids drop out. So I'd like to know, this is a referral to Susan, how many youngsters withdraw from school after 16 in a given year? Could we get a couple of years look at that?
All right, that's something Susan.
Yeah,
can
I'm
just
passing
get
that to
down.
Susan.
I'm
Right.
not gonna write that
I'll
down.
write that down. There was a comment that was made about the relationship between the composition of our student body and the composition of our faculty. That's been discussed a number of times at the DEI, recruiting, retention, hiring and retention, but to my knowledge, I have not heard of a strategy, so I would like an update on the district's strategy to accelerate our commitment to our articulated goal. Based on the slope, I guess Susan got me some numbers on the numbers. Our slope, it will take about 35 to 40 years to get within 10% of equity. So I don't want to see the decision made on race or whether somebody's left-handed or right-handed or has polka dots or doesn't have polka dots, but the general idea is that our faculty
There
should.
is a DEI plan that we've already submitted
Yeah,
to the
we
state.
just,
So we did review that, but I think Lori would be happy to come in.
I would love to have an
and
update.
And the committee that's working on it.
Well, I'm on that committee.
you are.
And I have not seen the strategy. We've had a lot of wonderful meetings, but I haven't seen
There's a
did you
whole
have a plan?
There's
We
Well,
have a
good.
plan.
Good. Just love to hear more about it. Thank you.
She
We already
presented
voted
the
on the
plan.
plan.
We already voted on it.
But there was supposed to be a circle back where
there's-
they
Yeah, we
came
have to circle
in a
back.
deep.
Yeah,
Well-
we need to have a discussion about it.
Well, one has a plan and then one has implementation, and I don't know where the implementation has gone.
Okay, well, we can share that, because there is implementation.
And
Right, what did,
finally, for Susan, I mentioned the business of a quarterly presentation to the council. And then finally, this meeting has been, from my perspective, a wonderful meeting in discussing two very important things, our ELA and our report card. And I wonder, this is your choice, Susan, or not, I would love to see a note posted on all social media and a message pushed to all the parents that this most recent COW meeting discussed the report card and the status, and also discussed the rolling out of the ELA program, so that parents and any other citizens can see what we did tonight. This was a great meeting.
All right, well, compliments to all of you and to all the people that came to present.
Now,
Now, anything else?
We
no.
gotta,
A lot on this list, I have to figure it out.
right, no, this is communication stuff, I guess. I don't know. We got that email last week about one of our members. Is
Yeah.
that official?
No, not yet.
No, it's not official.
Yeah.
Okay. Then,
Okay, we'll keep you updated on that.
appreciate it.
All right, anything else for the good of the people?
If
Yes,
that becomes official, that should go on our next meeting agenda so we can discuss the process by which we need to deal with it.
Okay.
all right. Before I say it, I just want to echo what Matthew said, and the richness of discussion in this meeting has been phenomenal. Motion to adjourn.
Second? Yeah, you don't vote on adjournment, right?
I usually don't.
You can?
It never ends.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
We're adjourned.
So good luck with us tonight, tomorrow night.
Oh, are we all going?
And I did send you a little video clip from last year, if you want to take a look. And I sent you some information that I had put together. You know, we've been asked by the community a little bit to go into details on the drivers. So besides those upward, arrows that we have, so we really put together some, language to describe why the budget is the way it is.
And I'm going to send the board a copy of a letter sent to John Burke.
We're adjourned. Mom.
Did you see the letter?
We're adjourned.
Today?
Still recording. The only letter I saw was thank you for sending it to me. I forwarded your letter to the council.
Oh, no, but he sends a letter that,
Yeah, I would love for you to do that.
I'll be there.
I mean, I can't do this
it
by
has a
myself.
lot of questions.
Last
for the
year, Kim was sitting by me,
Yeah.
and
Which I
him,
think is probably gonna
and,
mirror some of your questions.
and we answered the questions.
Well, I'll send it out
They
tonight,
were
too.
very
Well,
supportive
look at
last
John
year.
Burt's email, because I think that the questions you might have might be.
No, this was what I wrote to him was not about questions. It was pleading with the school, with the council, to defer a vote tomorrow night until they read the packet of information I sent them. Because everything we talked about, most of what we've talked about has been from an institutional point of view about what